Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix. Excuse me as I clear my throat. And welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live, where hopefully we'll be joined by our buddy from Florida, also known as Dr. Longo. That's right. Longo himself will be with us this evening. And we'll be talking about Scorpio, things Scorpion related, the month, the upcoming. Is there an election happening? I think there's an election happening this week. Am I right about that? Do you like my new green screen? Too bad StreamYard doesn't like it. I'd like to be able to use it since I have some very nice things that I could use, but for whatever reason, it doesn't recognize my green screen. So tonight you're just going to get me in the green screen, Mr. Green Screen. How is everyone? How are we doing tonight? Are we on needles and pins? Are we all cool? Are we good? Are we chilling like Bobby Dylan? All right, let's see who we have in the house, his house. Of course, there's Michael's sister Nino. There he is, DJ MC, top of the hour, right there. The lovely and talented one, Dr. Joan S., saving Austin one tooth at a time, of course. Kip is here, the California Contrarian. KK. What's happening? Night's Light. Hi, Night's Light. Is that Night's Light? That's Night's Light. The light of the night. Esperanza Vencero. Buenos dias. Or maybe buenos dias would be buenos noches, wouldn't it? Like it's nighttime. I got to get my my Hispanic straight. Cato, good to see you. Olivia Provorce with us. Hello, Olivia. Dova Haas is here. There's my man Ryan, the introspective woodworker. Jackie Delario. What's happening, Jackie? Let's see. Sun Tzu sitting here cursing. Nobody really likes the time change. Nobody's into it. Nobody's into it. I agree with you. Kaleidoscope Kara. Hi, Kara. Joe Litke. Yes, let's all follow Joe's suggestion here to like and subscribe. Thank you, Joe. Please do that. Also, feel free to leave comments. Hopefully they're positive, but I'm not the arbiter of your free speech, so you could leave any comment you like. Misbehaving 2 is here. Big Dave Sullivan. Charlie. Go Biloxi Bills. Symbolic studies. You know, Mario, I'll tell you what, Mario, if you feel like you want to jump on tonight and talk a little Scorpio, let's see. How do I send you? I'm going to send you. Maybe I do this. Let's see. It'd be great to have you on to talk a little Scorpio. I was thinking about getting you on here, Mario. Let's do this. I said I would do private chat. Yeah, let's do this. Mario, I'm going to put the invite link in here. And if you want to jump on and talk some Scorpio tonight, because you were definitely in my brain today. So that's for Mr. Mario from Symbolic Studies. If you want to jump in and talk some Scorpio, Dr. Longo should be here any moment. I think he's delivering a baby dolphin, if I'm not mistaken. Who else do we have here? I mean, let me rewind the tape. Going all the way back to, let's see, Cato. spent yesterday crying and angry over that squirrel. Today I saw a rare squirrel I love. I've been obsessed about on the hiking trail, on a tree about a foot from my face. The spirit of Peanut lives on. The spirit of Peanut is universal. It lives through all squirrels. We are all Peanut. We're all Peanut. Okay. I think the good doctor is with us. Lewis Walden wants to update us. The housing market's still struggling. Yes, indeed, they are. They are definitely on the ropes. All right. Let's get cooking here. Let's bring the man in. Good doctor. What's happening?
Chilling, Robert. How you doing?
So I was telling everybody that you were late because you were delivering a baby dolphin.
No, but I rode one to work. So
You rode one. That's, you know what? I bet you at some point you might have to deliver that dolphin's baby.
I've got a dolphin documentary on the back burner that goes into a lot of that psychic phenomena, essaying the what would you call it? The assaulting, dolphin on human, but a big whole rabbit hole, MK Ultra related. But
I see. Yes, I actually did an interview a long time ago. This was one of my most infamous interviews, where I interviewed a guy who actually wrote a book about having a sexual love affair with a dolphin. Okay. So yeah, no, seriously. He wrote a book about it, the whole thing, right? And it's very odd. And he worked at one of those, big dolphin pools, and he somehow psychically bonded with this dolphin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I played the interview totally straight. I'm like, okay, well, how did you two meet? Like, who gave who permission? Like, how did all that happen? But anyway, have you ever swam with dolphins? I'm sure you're in Florida. You must have swum with dolphins before.
Yeah. In enclosures. And then, of course, we've been fishing, and you see dolphins when you're out fishing, but haven't had any crazy, soul to soul experiences or anything. But I swam with them as a kid in enclosures.
Were you ever aware of that TV show Flipper? Did you ever see Flipper?
No, I don't think I ever did.
So that was popular when I was a kid. And it was like the Florida Keys version of Lassie. And instead of Lassie, they had a dolphin named Flipper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there was these two boys, and Flipper was their friend. And Flipper sort of led them on all these different adventures. And it was very wholesome family entertainment. Flipper the dolphin.
Yeah. I was more of a Free Willy guy myself. More of a... And Lassie. Or what was her name? Was it Lassie?
Yeah, well,
what's the border collie's name?
Well, yeah, it was Lassie.
Lassie, yeah. I grew up on Lassie too.
You grew up on Lassie. Lassie's kind of transgenerational. Let's catch up on your world before we dive into the subject matter, which is loosely based on some Scorpio stuff that we were tossing around. Give us some updates. What's happening in the world of Dr. Longo?
Well, thanks for having me on. Good.
Sure.
Always good to be here. And I'm always sending people your way, and appreciate the early on support from this guy. So shout out to Robert. But recently moved into a house. My van broke down a couple months ago, coinciding with when I moved into a house. So I've been very stationary, not traveling around Florida as much these last couple months, and focusing on the bookstore a little more. We're working on publishing books now too. So that's
cool.
Kind of added a little bit on top of that. And what I'm researching right now, a couple trees down in Miami, baobab trees, this whole rabbit hole with the Little Prince,
Right.
being one of the most famous stories of all time. They say it's second to the Bible in terms of being reprinted and retranslated. And I never grew up with the Little Prince, but apparently, as I'm learning, baobab trees play a big part. Baobab trees are the tree of life, right? They're sacred in like every country they show up. And
Hmm.
In India, mysteriously, they're not native, but there's a handful of them there, and they're big. So they're worshipped and venerated as sacred, and the number one tree on earth, even higher than the banyan tree. And so where they show up, even when they're not native, they're regarded as sacred and venerated. Well, we have even more than India has here in Florida, specifically the Miami area. So Miami, the flag of Miami, is pretty much the flag of India. Not many people are aware of that. So there's all these links, and we did a video about baobab trees like a year ago, but this one's even bigger. We found a bigger one, so we're doing another video
They're
on it.
they're in Florida.
They are in Florida. They're not native, and
Right.
that's kind of where the whole mystery is. Uh, Miami's only 100 years old, so when you have a tree that looks larger than 100 years old, it's kind of a big question mark and a big mystery. In the Caribbean, there's baobab trees, which come from Africa, by the way, and
They're
Mad-
African. Yep.
Madagascar and parts of Australia too. Um, Somehow they ended up in Florida, and you can see 100-year-old tree, and they're big, but then there's these other trees that are bigger than what looks like 100 years old. We have a precedent for that in the Caribbean. They have baobab trees that are over 250 years old. They were slaves who snuck them across the Atlantic. But we don't know how the ones in Florida appeared. So that's the mystery.
Yeah. Let's give people a visual here of what the baobab tree looks like. Very
Yeah.
it's a very interesting tree, and if I'm not mistaken, the insides of the tree, if they're not hollow, they have a fairly large cavity,
Yeah.
and in the tradition of the Sangoma in Africa, when the Sangoma would pass away, he would be buried. He would be interned inside the center of the baobab tree,
Wow.
so that he would become part of the tree.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. There's a couple like Native American legends that are similar with cypress trees. Cypress trees, by the way, depending on who you ask, either ruled by Saturn or Pluto, but they have this association with uh, slow moving, slow growing, the
Mhm.
underworld. And I don't know maybe we could determine what rules baobab trees. I'd be guessing Jupiter because of the mass and stuff like that. But the well, here, just so people know, the baobab is the tree of life. Why? Because it supplies every need that man has. There's other sacred trees, but they only supply a handful of the needs, not all of them, right? So with the baobab tree, it's one of the most nutritious foods on earth. Parts of the fruit are considered a superfood, right? It's like a vitamin C bomb. You can use baobab powder in your water. It's amazing. It's like vitamin C mix. It tastes the same. Really, really good. And that's cream of tartar, by the way. So I know, a lot of people grew up cooking with cream of tartar. It was kind of more popular before, like cooking pies and stuff in the house all the time. Cream of tartar was pretty common. It's not as common now, in the baobab tree. The die off of baobab trees might have had something to do with that. Cream of tartar today is sourced like rather artificially, but the baobab fruit is a substantial natural source of cream of tartar. So if anyone's into these Tartarian conspiracy theories, we better be talking about the tree of Tartaria, the Tartarian tree.
Can you see the shared link here? Can you see the visual?
Yes, yeah.
Right. So this gets into some of the functions of baobab, including vitamin C. Helps with energy release, reduction of tiredness and fatigue, immune function, improves that, digestive health, healthy looking skin, makes you look younger, helps fight the signs of aging. And then here we have, it looks like an enormous vanilla pod from this perspective.
Yeah.
But you have baobab powder. Now, have you tried this? Have you tried the citrusy flavor of the baobab fruit?
Yes. There's a market down in, I think, Hollywood in Broward County, which is where you see these trees. Broward and Dade County has the most. There's kind of like a flea market where they have a really cool herb shop with all the herbs you could ever want, and they sell packets of baobab powder. It's pretty easy to source in general. I think Whole Foods carries it sometimes, but baobab powder, it's probably the most popular way to ingest it is with water, just
Right.
like lemon water. It's really good. It's really good in the morning. It's very tame flavor. And another thing is that it has kind of like these more metaphysical properties too. They believe it's kind of like a wives' tale if you sleep near the baobab tree. If a woman's dealing with fertility issues, if she sleeps near the baobab tree, it can resolve fertility issues. And that's one of the big wives' tales attached to it. Well, they came out with a study that backs that. So someone in California, some institute backed that. They said if the woman's eating baobab fruit while living near a baobab tree, then she certainly would have increased fertility. So also, you touched on them being hollow. They're not always hollow, but they can be hollowed, and they can have they call them false cavities, where it'll be like three stems mashed in together, and there will be gaps between the stems.
Yep.
But they can also hold dozens of thousands of gallons of water. So I was saying it supplies every need. It supplies water amply. It supplies food. You can eat the leaves like spinach, and you can eat almost every part of the fruit. And then it provides clothing. You can fashion clothing out of it. It provides shelter. So that's the big one that most trees can't provide. Is shelter. You can cut a tree down and build something, but we're talking about living in the living tree. You can do that with a baobab tree. And like Robert said, some of these cavities can get really impressive. They have bars inside of baobab trees. They have jails inside of baobab trees. People get married inside baobab trees, buried, like Robert said. And it's really the kind of like the focal point, the foundation, the bedrock of a village is the baobab tree, where they grow. They're relied on so much. And we have them in Florida. No one even knows. This big one that we're studying, they don't even know it's there. There's zero documentation online for this one tree in Miami. And people need to know it's like the spiritual center of Miami. People don't even realize it. We've kind of proved that in a couple videos with US1 root tracing through two separate baobab tree sites, where US1 number one highway in America, right? Number one, founded on November 11th.
11/11.
US1 highway, created on 11/11. It goes from Florida pretty much all the way up the East Coast. Starts down in Key West. It runs right through Hollywood Circle, where there's five ancient baobab trees. Here's what's crazy is we caught the mayor of Hollywood, Florida, who's been to Israel and who's been photographed with an assault rifle.
You mean a mayor in Florida has been to Israel?
Yeah,
Imagine that.
yeah, dual citizenship. And
Yeah.
by the way, the rabbit hole on this is crazy. The baobab trees, you could go on and on about why they're cool, why they're, hippie and woo woo and, nutritious. But what's crazy, along US 1 is the Hollywood Circle, Hollywood, Florida, Holy Wood.
Hmm.
Holy Wood. And it was developed by a guy named Joseph Young. He develops the circle. US 1 wraps around it. Roundabouts are very rare in Florida. They're pretty rare in America in general. Especially,
They're starting to become more popular, by the way.
right.
Yeah.
But 100 years ago, this was very unique. They planned this whole city around this circle.
Mhm.
And that's US 1. It goes right through there. Well, guess where the last night that the 9/11 terrorists, where they spent their last night in, enjoying their free time before they set off on the so-called attack.
Beneath the baobab trees, of course.
Yep, they were popping bottles and eating shellfish with
Which are not really on the menu.
yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And they were hitting on like, amateur porn stars which is what Hollywood, Florida is very famous for. It's like a kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's like the porn Hollywood of America. They are chasing tail, doing shots, and slurping down oysters at Young Circle right before the attack started.
Just getting ready to die for Allah, right?
Yeah. But yeah. I bring that up because the mayor who's been to Israel, or families, dual citizenship, she introduced they unveiled this new park. They renovated the park. And this, with the trees, it's crazy that they hooked the trees up to speakers to where the life force energy of the trees plays music out of speakers. This is something that didn't get popular till like 15 years later, when they started hooking those anodes and stuff up to mushrooms and like making like synthesizer music out of it. They did this in 1999 or 98 or 2000, right before 9/11. They made this beautiful like tree of life exhibit type thing.
Mm-hmm.
The tree controls the water, the fountain, the jets on the fountain in the park. This tree's like hooked up to all these wires. It's like alive and living, and
Sure.
no one even bats an eye. People just walk by it, and that's where, of course, the 9/11 attackers happened. But when they unveiled this new project with the automated speakers and shit, the mayor of Hollywood slipped up, and she said, "Our ancient baobab trees." Ancient baobab trees. So 100 years old isn't quite ancient.
No, not quite ancient. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm actually going through the actual.
Yeah.
It's a Pepe's
Yeah.
plants. Yeah.
Oh, if you could just scroll down a little bit, please. That picture with the red arrow on it, that's
Yeah.
100-year-old baobab tree. That's what a tree that was actually planted in Florida 100 years ago would look like.
Right.
It's not that big. You can tell it's a massive tree, but it's not that big. The ones
Yeah.
in Hollywood Circle are huge. The one in Miami that there's not a single picture, not a single video of online. We had to sneak in behind a fence, behind an amphitheater. What's crazy is that this site in Hollywood, Florida, filled with it's an amphitheater. It's an outdoor music venue.
Right.
And there's 5 baobab trees around it. Well, now this new site that we're looking at over in Miami, it's right next to the Miami Circle. It's right next to all that old Miami is older than the pyramids type headlines you saw like a year ago. It's
Right.
all right in the middle of that in downtown Miami. Not only that, talk about a coincidence in terms of false flags or psyops. The other Baobab location, it's Bayfront Park in Miami. Bayfront Park in Miami is where I believe somebody shot at Roosevelt and killed the mayor of Chicago instead.
Oh, wow.
I might have the wrong president on that, but there was a presidential assassination attempt, almost in the shadow of this Miami Baobab tree. So what is it linking? 9/11 attackers partying at one Baobab tree. It was the Italian communist assassin. He was almost like an elf, like a small person. He was almost like a little person.
Mm-hmm.
But blah blah blah. So Baobabs, all this mystery, tied in with these trees. It's fascinating.
Can you see this one here with the woman standing next to it?
Yeah.
Is this the one that's in Hollywood, Florida? This one is.
Yep.
This one's pretty big.
That's the main one in Baobab. Sorry, that's the main one in Hollywood, Florida. There's 5, and that's the largest. The one in Miami is that big, a little wider, and then the height, that one's like, I don't know, 30 feet tall. This one it's close to 100. It's huge. Huge.
There's something very elephantine about this tree.
Yeah.
Right. The bark looks almost like the sort of, dry, scaly skin of an elephant. It's got the size and mass. These almost look like elephant trunks in some ways. That's fascinating. Really fascinating.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool, man. You come up with the most interesting stuff down there in your neck of the exotic woods in Florida. That is so cool.
Well, Florida's like the final frontier ironically, even though America started in Florida, it's like the final frontier for, mystique, hidden lore, hauntings, UFO, activity. It's kind of uncharted.
Well, it also seems like there's a fair amount of it that's just in these areas that are like unexploited and uninhabited, right? Like the swamps. I remember one of your early videos where they found the really really old people that had been preserved due to the lack of like carbon dioxide that would degrade the body and all that stuff, right? It's like, where do you find that? You just don't really find that stuff anywhere else. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's so many remote parts of Florida that are just, slightly off the beaten path that people just really haven't spent a lot of time with. And you're in a veritable, I don't know, like gold mine down there with all this stuff. What about UFOs, aliens, extraterrestrials, any Floridian lore, dragon people, creatures of the Black Lagoon, the Dogon? What about that stuff?
Yeah, tons of rabbit holes. Of course, if anyone's going to space from Earth, Florida is Moonport, USA.
Right.
Florida is where we choose as a planet to send our resources, up to space. Now, I don't necessarily believe in space, just like the way, NASA kind of puts it out. But nonetheless, Florida is where all the magic's happening in terms of launching up to space. So it would make sense that if anyone's coming down, or if anyone's, out there, if they're focusing in on what we're doing, they would kind of be focused in on Florida. That being said, there's a place called Opelika, and that's like a suburb of Florida. I mean, of Miami.
Right.
And I forget the name of the school, but there's a school there where they had one of the most substantiated UFO sightings in American history. It wasn't as big as, the Washington, D.C. flyover and the L.A., Los Angeles flyover. It wasn't as big as those, but in terms of how many people saw it, it was a lot. It was a couple dozen verifiable, adult, professional, reliable witnesses, in addition to dozens of kids. So these kids saw something on the playground. They pulled their teacher over. I forget the name of this school, but it's near Opelika or Miami Springs, or on the outskirts of Miami. They saw this UFO. The teachers come over, and voila, there it is. A couple days later or something, they see it again. But what's crazy is that they would have, it was such an event, and so many of the locals, swore that it happened and were obsessed over it, that they would come and do anniversary, there's anniversary stakeouts. So on the 1 year anniversary, 2 years, they'd come and try and sit in the same spot and see something. They had really, really good success doing that. That's how they were able to build so many repeated sightings with so many people witnessing it. And, this was probably just before video cameras became household items. It was like 1950s or 1960s. And yeah, we don't have any video of it, but lots and lots of South Floridians saw it. And yeah, and I forget the name. I wish I could remember the name of this school, but
Well, you also had the Gulf Breeze sightings there in Florida, but those were obviously
yeah.
fabricated, right? But for a
Oh
while,
well,
it was a big deal, right?
talk about fabricated sightings. This Dr. Stephen Greer guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's, in my opinion, he's a total loser. Total,
Well, he's creepy. Come on, let's
yeah.
go.
Him. What's the guy's name? Bob Lazar.
Yeah,
Him.
Bob Lazard.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. Stephen Greer and Bob
Yeah.
Lazar. They're talking about aliens all goddamn day. If anyone's an alien, it's them.
Totally.
They look like
Stephen Greer is a total alien, dude.
Yeah. His skin suit isn't on quite properly. You know what I mean?
It fits a little too tight for him, right?
And he doesn't have. He's jacked too. You ever seen Stephen Greer?
That's what I'm saying. It's the skin suit's a little too tight for him.
He's jacked, and he doesn't necessarily have a jacked personality, right? Which always kind of struck me as odd. But
yeah.
I'll tell you why I bring him up. I was kind of into his stuff. He had, some things were, there's a little bit of value in his stuff. I think it's mostly nonsense. I think he's like a big time liar. I think he's one of these podcast types. He goes around and does every podcast, but where's the evidence?
Well, who's he work for though? I mean, that's where the
whistleblowers.
Who's he work for, right?
Yeah, totally. He claims to have briefed all these presidents and whatever, but blah blah blah. He does these. What's it all for, right? Who's he working for? I don't know, but I know what he's doing and how he's making a buck off this. He does these little meditation retreats where we can't guarantee anything, but if you pay for the $1,000 ticket, we can pretty much guarantee a UFO is going to pop up, at least one UFO. And there's some YouTubers online who have exposed him into oblivion for dropping flares out of airplanes on his retreats.
Oh, that's so weak.
And he did it in Florida. And the biggest one where he got caught was over, I think, in Jupiter. So Palm Beach County, right over here. He was on the beach. They're looking out at the ocean, and then they pulled the flight logs. They've got the flight tracker pattern. And one of Stephen Greer's friends, associates, whatever. He hired someone who knows. But a plane drops at least one flare out of the airplane. And then Stephen Greer goes, "They're here. They're here. Everyone stay calm. Everyone stay calm. Emit your love and light. Give them the frequency of welcome them to Earth, people. This is serious, you know." And they did the whole thing. People were like, crying. They're saying, "Oh, they're here. This is the 5D, the fifth dimension," and blah 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 blah. All the gobbledygook, all the mumbo jumbo. And those tickets are like hundreds of dollars. I think they might even be, uh, close to 1,000, like depending on the experience. They go out into the desert, they do all the cameras, and that's big money. And
Wow.
that they insure a show. They make sure that the people see at least one thing.
Yeah.
And people have exposed him, and I've seen enough to be convinced. But that's from outer space. You've got this guy here at the
Well,
creature.
this is Stephen Greer in the morning coming out of his cold plunge.
Yeah,
This is just before he gets his Earth suit on.
yeah.
Yeah, no, this is a Floridian. Well, it goes beyond Florida, but Creature from the Black Lagoon, the movie, is set in Florida, right? Am I right?
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it was set there. It's definitely filmed at Wakulla Springs and a couple other springs in Florida, where
Yeah.
the water is so clear, and they already have like an underwater like viewing station kind of to see mermaid shows and stuff like that. That
Yeah.
it was easy to film down there already. But yes, Wakulla Springs, I think.
You know what's interesting about this image, and I know that it comes from a movie, but it looks almost too anatomically correct in some ways, right? Like they have figured something out with this creature where if you were to actually see this creature in so-called real life, you wouldn't really bat an eyelash, right? Because I mean, look at the way it's anatomically set up with these fin-like, hands with claws in the front
Yeah.
and gills. I mean, it feels like they're actually working off more of a real life model than they are sitting around going, "Well, what would this creature look like?"
Well,
You know?
yeah, no, that's a great point, Robert. Is I don't think they got the memo yet. Hey, guys, we're pretending these things come from other planets.
Yeah,
They were just like, oh yeah, this is just another monster that oozes up from within the earth, or something like that. And I think that's much more, Occam's razor would say, if there's anything like that, if there's any other bipedal creature, they're probably local and have been here all along, and kind of like what Tucker Carlson was saying a couple of weeks ago. And I'm not fully on that train or anything, but
yeah, yeah. You're familiar with the Dogon and Nomo, right? You're familiar with that, aren't you?
yeah, I tell that story when I go into the etymology of cancer and the
Hmm.
etymology of Pluto and
Hmm.
Sirius. And what is it? The Greeks went down and established contact with the Dogon tribe. And I think the Greeks might not have even had the dog, really. Greeks didn't have, they had dogs, but dog culture wasn't a Greek culture. Like they didn't love having dogs in the
Yeah,
family.
Greek culture is a goat culture.
Yeah. So they weren't much of a dog people. Well,
Right.
the legend or the folklore is that they kind of went down to Africa during some conquest and established contact with the Dogon tribe. The Dogon tribe is where, according to this story, we get the word dog,
Hmm.
Dogon. And Sirius is the black dog of the underworld. Cerberus, Sirius. Sirius is in Cancer. Cancer is where we get canine.
Hmm.
Um, and Pluto, Goofy, Snoopy, Scooby, all the same archetype.
Right.
All the dog of the underworld, all sniffing in to mystery and mischief and, the underworld. It's Anubis,
Hmm.
Snoopy, Anubis, Canubis. the Dogon tribe, it's said they were big on weed, cannabis, and dogs, canines.
Mhm.
And when they were asked where they came from, they say Sirius or Canis, the constellation Canis,
Well, they said
Sirius.
specifically it was what Sirius B,
Right.
which was not visible.
Hmm.
Sirius A was visible, and they pointed to the area of the sky where Sirius B was. I think it was the French who went
Hmm.
down and did their anthropological studies with the Dogon. And then later on, they were able to locate Sirius B with the aid of a power telescope. And that's exactly
Right.
where it was, even though it wasn't visible. And Dogon and Nomo is the head, right? He is the creator god of their not really their religion, but their world. Like Nomo gives the Dogon people all these different gifts,
Hmm.
and supposedly Nomo was amphibious,
Wow.
right? That's the other part of all this. Nomo is amphibious,
I don't
and
know I don't know that side of the story. That's
yeah,
crazy.
Nomo is a fish man,
Okay. Oh yeah,
right?
yes. Okay, yeah.
Right.
The fish, yeah, fish
Yeah,
deity.
and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the same name for dolphin in Aboriginal is Nomo, right?
Hmm.
So Nomo also connects with dolphin intelligence in Aboriginal culture mythology. So Nomo is a very interesting character in terms of like this creator god
Hmm.
who dwells in water,
Yeah.
and I feel like what they're doing in some ways with this creature is they're sort of tapping into uh, Nomo and these
Yeah.
these aquatic beings who may or may not be from another world. I mean, I did a whole show last week. I don't know if you caught any of it, but I was talking about how lakes, really deep lakes, are connected to Scorpio.
Hmm.
Just in terms of like a body of water, right? Like Cancer is really local water, like wells and creeks and streams. Um,
Hmm.
and ponds. But then when you go into Scorpio, you get into much bigger and deeper water, like these massive lakes and these large raging rivers like the Nile and the Euphrates and the Amazon. And then when you get to Pisces, you're into oceans and seas. And one of the things that I was kind of bouncing around with, there's a lot of like death imagery that's connected with these big lakes, and not just death imagery, but there's also, I took 3 lakes. There was Baikal and Lake Tahoe and Loch Ness, and they all have a version of the Loch Ness monster, right? They all have this very amphibious creature that's connected to their mythology. And what really came to me was that these lakes, these really deep lakes, are the equivalent of portals,
Oh yeah.
right? And when you look at like the movie Stargate, you know, when you look at that thing that they step through, it's almost like this watery portal, that takes them to that it's not really an alternate Earth, but another
Yeah.
world, right? And it just feels to me like when you like this creature here, like he's popping up from this lagoon, right? And maybe maybe Nomo or maybe other beings like this creature dwell in this lagoon. But again, maybe these lagoons are um, they have access to other worlds, because I really feel like water is this deeply conductive source that has a lot more power than we understand. So just throwing these things out there, and it's a really fascinating thing to kind of comprehend, and that the way that we get to other places is perhaps not even through our sky, but through our bodies of water that are around us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, God separated the waters from the waters. And if there's any piercing, new dimensions or piercing some new realm, it would have to kind of be birthed into it through water. And
Exactly.
even the concept of anointing something is if you're trying to pull down a force greater than what's present here in the material realm, water or oil, so some viscosity or some fluid is needed to kind of bring the plane down onto the tarmac, like,
Right,
you know.
right. It's a medium. It is a medium. You can say, well, air is a medium. No, not really. I mean, air has some moisture in it, but it's not a medium
Yeah,
like water. Water is a very different kind of medium.
totally.
Um, so real quick, did you, speaking of water, were you able to dodge Milton, the monster?
Oh yeah, we were all safe, all good here. Southeast Florida was pretty safe, but West Coast got torn up. Also about water and portals, I always like to remind people that water is nothing more than a crystal that's liquid at room temperature. So just it's like quartz, except it's liquid at room temperature. That's all water is. That's why it's so important. That's why it's the gold standard of fluids. It's a liquid crystal.
There you go. You and I were talking a little bit about Scorpio. We started talking about Peanut the squirrel. Poor Peanut. Poor Peanuts. We're talking about Peanut the squirrel and I guess the raccoon, who was also ratted out by this woman. She's from Texas. The woman who ratted this guy out didn't even live in New York. She's from Texas,
Wow.
and supposedly there was this other guy who had an alligator for a pet. Do you know about him?
No.
Yeah, this is the guy from upstate New York. He was part of
Wow.
he's part of the same sting. He got swatted
Wow.
with his he'd had this alligator for like 11 years, and now the alligator got taken away from him, and he's in some kind of a theme park or some kind of alligator park in Florida. Is in your world now,
That's
and
terrible.
and the man is very distraught that he's lost his alligator. So we were talking about peanut and squirrel as a Scorpio word,
Yeah.
and this whole idea of even being euthanized is such a scorpionic act. And then it got
Oh
me to
yeah.
thinking about, well, first of all, the constellation Scorpio, which I do want to talk with you about, but also the animal phenomena with Trump in this election cycle has been really fascinating.
Yeah.
Really, really fascinating. So, of course, it started off with the Haitians and they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats.
Talk about
Um,
Scorpio too. Haitian, Hades.
Hades underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then all of a sudden, in typical Trump fashion, what sounds like, just absolute bombast during the debate, it's the most memorable thing that comes out of the debate. And the Kiffness tune that he put around that, right? And then here we are about 5 days away from the election, and this whole Peanut the squirrel thing. Like, when did you find out about this Peanut the squirrel thing?
Yesterday, I think.
Right. Just really just like it just happened.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
now all of a sudden it's become like part of the Trump election war
Yeah. What's
immediately.
What's crazy is that I always try and stay in the middle, and I'm trying not be biased, but I love Trump and all this, but when I saw people putting it in the headline, it's like, can we really pin this on Democrats, and stuff like that, because that's how it was getting spun. Well, then I went to look up, prove me wrong, but if you search up Peanut the Squirrel CNN, they don't have a segment on it yet. You don't have, the NBC, CNN specifically. I don't believe they've covered it yet. Could be wrong. Not looking too close, but it really is like a war not just for sanity, but these people have this abortion craze, being drunk on abortions. There's this toxic thought, notion, sentiment that euthanizing things is releasing them from like a painful, unjust existence. And it's very gnostic almost. It's like the left wants to free life, like you know I don't know how
Like
to
they
say
like
it.
they like they want to liberate them from the fallen world. Is
Oh
that what
yeah,
you're
yeah, like
yeah,
liberate them from living. I mean,
right?
it's like a crusade for death. It's insane.
Where do you fall on Gnosticism? It's as a belief system, and this idea that Earth is just a simulation,
Yeah,
and a simulation that's controlled by these archons.
yeah,
It's become quite a popular
yeah,
belief system or anti-belief system.
yeah.
I think,
That's go ahead.
what do you think about it? I mean, what's your take on the rise of Gnosticism? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, me and my brother feel the same way about it. We published this book over here called Monad. That's our first published book. Really, my brother's passion project. He brought that to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be prouder. It's a really good book. And why he chose that, and kind of why I agree and thought it was such a great idea, is the Neoplatonists. 300 years after the birth of Jesus or death of Jesus or so, they were tackling these issues. People were the Gnostics were coming up 200 years, 300 years after Jesus. They were kind of vying for control of what the dominant form of Christianity would be.
Right.
And you had James and the followers of what I believe to be the true Jesus movement going this direction. Paul's going down the middle, and that's what Rome ended up going with. A lot of the Gnostics, and again, can you class them all together as Gnostic? No. Did they know themselves as that? No. Am I an expert on the entire history? Not at all. But I've seen enough to know where they went wrong, why they died out, why it wasn't God's plan for Christianity. What I think about the Gnostics is it's a toxic, intoxicating idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's one that mankind's always going to be struggling with. It's just getting repackaged today into a lot of this matrix simulation theory.
Exactly.
It's the same pitfalls, it's the same cul-de-sacs that philosophers out
Uh,
and made sense of this 1700 years ago. You know,
right.
so the Neoplatonists, when they were coming up, Christianity was coming up, and they'd kind of forgotten the Platonic legacy of the West and Western thought and Christianity. Christianity too, like the Trinity is attributed to Plato, and the Neoplatonists were tackling a lot of these Gnostic fallacies. Number one, that we're not supposed to be here. We're supposed to be here. The world is harmonious and good. Only a fool, a loser, right? Someone who's retarded spiritually, physically, mentally, can deny this. You'd have to be ignorant or, ignoring on purpose to not see the harmony and beauty and purpose in nature and life. And, human on human interactions can complicate all this stuff. But just a zooming out at nature proves nature is good. There's no such thing as evil in nature, right? The Gnostics have tied their shoes together in many of these arguments, and they believe, again, you can't generalize entirely, but the trend that it really took, how it all kind of fizzled out, was suicide cults. That's where most of them ended up if they weren't converted, stomped out, or assimilated into other groups. They killed themselves. So we really need to tackle these issues and point out the fallacies, because you're noticing What was the Jonestown cult? What was all these other cults? If you remove the simple element of UFOs or a different dimension or a mothership or a new simulation or matrix terminology, if you just take that out and put it to the side, because it's all very 21st century, 20th century terminology, all very inspired by sci-fi. If you take the sci-fi element out, we're running right back into the Gnostic fallacies that we're not where we're supposed to be, that God set us up for failure or is punishing us, the archons. I don't believe in any of it. I actually believe astrology is the great remedy to it. When we acknowledge Saturn as the lord of this world, but Jupiter is the god of form. Form triumphs matter. Matter, no matter how mundane or evil you want to consider it. Oh, light is so beautiful. Why is light trapped in matter? The Neoplatonists tackled this issue. They explained it. The light chooses to be entrapped in matter. Your soul chooses to partake in a human existence. It's all consensual, but you necessarily take a drink from the draught of remembering, forgetting, It's part of the game. The Gnostics forget that they've forgotten. They forgot that they've forgotten a lot of these things, and therefore feel the need to escape the world they don't fully understand. If they just put a little bit more mind power to understanding, studying harmony, right? Not, my brother explains this beautifully. The difference between virtue, vice, and good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
Nature is good. Mankind interjected evil into nature. Therefore, we have to use virtue to combat evil. But evil, vice, virtue, all of it together is all good. It's all good. And people have just lost touch with the truth. And a lot of these Gnostic fallacies are coming back because of movies like The Matrix, because of the sci-fi renaissance and the Elon Musk paradigm. People are starting to think this is a simulation. It's just new vocabulary for that same Gnostic impulse to kind of bubble to the surface.
To me, it's like just a remake of sort of Sartrean existentialism in a lot of ways, with this kind of cosmic religio trappings, and that people have come to a cul-de-sac, and they have convinced themselves that there is no meaning here, right? There's no meaning to any of this. It's all just blatant suffering. It's all been created by a malevolent demiurge. And the only way out, right, is to figure out like how to, slip through a crack in the pleroma at some point. And that's about it. I mean, there's nothing redemptive. And again, I'm sure there are people that are listening to this and watching and feeling like there are some interesting things with Gnosticism. One of the things I do think that's interesting about Gnosticism, which we may differ a little bit on, is this idea of the archons. I do believe that there are malevolent spirits in this world. Whether or not you want to call them archons, that's a whole other subject unto itself, right? But it's just become so popular because it's also been, in some ways, hyperinflated by the political situation. And people that just want to tap out or opt out. And I get it, right? I get it. Like, I don't like the left. I don't like the right. I'm not me. I'm just people in general. So what's left? What's left? If I don't like the left and I don't like the right, then what's left? Well, I'll tap out, right? I'll just tap out and I'll black pill. And then, maybe if enough of us tap out and black pill, we can, check out and rebuild or whatever, right? And so Gnosticism has become very popular as it relates to, I would say, political ideology. And the other thing is that you have brain dead Christians. I'm sorry, there are some brain dead Christians, right? And you have brain dead Christians, and then the Gnostics look at the brain dead Christians, and they say, "See, this is what you guys believe in. This is what, your dime store version of religion adds up to. And if I had to pick yours versus mine, well, mine's going to win every day, right? So, but it's not a fair comparison contrast at all.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think that, and again, astrology is the great remedy to this whole cul-de-sac fallacy roadblock, in the understanding of good and evil. Saturn being the Lord, and this works. This is compatible with the Bible's teachings. Is Saturn or Satan is the Lord of this world. It says that in the Bible. And when you look at matter, yes, could you, if you have no idea what we're living on, who we are, what we're doing, the fact that we're restricted to a body could seem, scary or claustrophobic. So I think it's a little bit of like spiritual claustrophobia. People are not evolved enough to have enough faith, hope in bedrock, in this sense of a benevolent creator. And then they're fielding all these big, heady topics like, without that foundation, without that framework, it's a sense of spiritual claustrophobia, that you're stuck in a body. And like I said, with the suicide cults, that's how most of them, I don't know about most, but a lot of the big Gnostic sects ended up in Jonestown style mass suicides, where they would say, okay, well, we've attained enlightenment. We've meditated all there is to meditate. We've done all the drugs there is to do. We've done all the tantric, secrets there is to unlock, but we're still here. The body's still here. Why is the body still here? They don't understand that God wants us to live here in the Garden of Eden to constantly improve this. There's no great rapture coming. There's no great bus coming that you either are, make the bus or you're left off the bus. It's none of this grand termination's coming. So it's hard to say, but it's very appealing to younger people today and to people who don't have a job and people who don't have kids, because they see the world coming to an end, not
right.
Continuing. They don't see their own future blossoming. So therefore the world kind of also must collapse in on itself.
What's really interesting is astrologically, we've been thrust back into the final degree of Capricorn and Pluto and Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that, those final degrees of Pluto and Capricorn, it really is the end of something very significant. First of all, Capricorn rules time, right? And so when we finally move through the last degrees of Pluto and Capricorn, we are literally, you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier in the week about the Aquarian age. We were kicking that around a little bit. Mm-hmm. And Pluto in Aquarius does represent a new time, specifically because Capricorn rules time, and we're moving into a completely different time beyond the rulership of the Lord of Time. Mm-hmm. And when and I believe, as we've seen in these final degrees, right, like the weariness, the world weary quality of the people that you were speaking about, right? No hope, desolation, job prospects are getting dimmer by the day with the advent of artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like this old world is really dying, mm-hmm. right? And it feels like, when things like that are in the air, people are more inclined to participate in a doomsday cult. Mm-hmm. And even if it's an open air doomsday cult, it doesn't have to be like a Jonestown, or it doesn't have to be a Heaven's Gate. By the way, I think something else happened with that Heaven's Gate group in Rancho Santa Fe.
Yeah,
that's a different story. But I think you're onto something here, right? Like, these people have become participants in an open air doomsday cult because of
Yep.
what's going on in the world.
Yep.
And the Gnostic, whether or not they embrace Gnosticism as their religion, right? They're embracing Gnosticism
Yeah.
without
No,
taking the communion.
totally. You don't have to identify as a Gnostic. Almost no one ever would. It's an attitude within Christianity, is what it really is. It's an attitude that we're on our own. There's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
And like I said, they tried all the methods of escaping the body because they kind of fell into this Hindu, Buddhist fallacy too, that the goal of life is to escape life. That's simply not the case.
Right. Kill the ego. Kill the ego. Right.
Yeah. Turn off your brain, white man. Let me do all the work. Let me get all the jobs. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole Jew age movement in a nutshell.
It's amazing. I'll tell you, when I was in California, do you know the kirtan? You know that kirtan music?
Yeah, Krishna Das, and
right? All those guys, right? Yeah. So
Jewish.
in the Bay Area, they were all Jews.
Yeah.
They love the kirtan shit, man. They were totally into it. Yeah.
No, dude. I love to tell that story. I've got one of my good friends who's pretty Gnostic minded himself. Actually, is a big kirtan guy, and we always talk about Neem Karoli Baba, who I'm a big fan of. I love Neem Karoli Baba. I like Osho too. I'll learn from anyone, but Neem Karoli Baba was maybe what you could say one of the last real saints here on earth. Miracle worker, could bend time and space. He could neutralize an acid trip. He was impervious to psychedelics.
Didn't Albert give him a bunch of LSD and did nothing to him?
Yeah. I think it was either Ram Dass or someone else. By the way, Ram Dass, I don't know if he was Jewish, but a lot of those guys were Jewish.
Richard Alpert was Jewish, yes.
Yeah, so Ram Dass, Krishna Das, all these guys. Ram Dass was also gay. Whatever. Well, I guess old Neem Karoli Baba had a bit of a sense of humor on that one because he named him Rammed Ass. Rammed Ass. Ram Dass. Also an Aries, I think.
He is an Aries. Aries. Yeah.
Well, another thing is he'd have all these Jews, which they were, not good or bad, just they were Jews who were soul searching in another country, and he would have them, worshiping at his feet, or that's what they would do. It's the thing to do. They would be worshiping at his feet, and they would ask him, they'd be begging him, what is the secret of enlightenment? Please, we came all this way. We're proving ourselves. How do we become enlightened? How do we become enlightened? He's like, these fucking white people, like, just, live your life. Like, that's not the point.
Right.
You're not, if every single person becomes enlightened on earth, who's running who's doing the water treatment facility? Who's doing the beach cleanup? Who's doing the
water treatment facility it's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah. Who's doing all this? Who's taking care of society, So we can't have 7 billion enlightened people. We need to bring the general enlightenment up of the planet, not personal. Everyone's trying to hit the lottery and dip out, right? It's similar to the Gnostic.
Yeah.
It's similar. But he'd have all these Jews worshiping at his feet, right? And he was a troll. He was a real troll. And he would tell them, they'd be begging, how do we become enlightened? Please, please, please. He would say, through Jesus. I swear to God.
I believe I've heard that story.
He would hit them with Jesus Christ, become like Christ, study Christ. It was all he would say to them for months at a time. Sometimes was be like Jesus, and he almost knew that's
come on, that's what a good teacher would do, right? A good teacher would bust their paradigms.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and I think it was him or one of the good Indian saints who said guru is the art of bully.
The art of bully. Yeah.
Yeah, to be a bully.
Yeah. There's the old phonetic trick with guru, right? Which is G U R U, right? You are the guru. Right? That's the old,
Oh,
yeah.
you are. Wow.
Like
Good.
G, you are you.
Yeah.
So you're the guru. I wanted to get into this subject of the election happening in November in Scorpio season.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this before. And there's the how do you say it? The sort of the general story, right? The general story of the election is that at one time, I believe elections actually took place during the summertime, and then they actually were held over a longer period of time. But then they said, okay, we need a period where people are no longer working on the farm, right? So the light goes down. All the sheaves have been brought in, and now it's time to vote, right? So it's the first. It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday. They don't say the first Tuesday, by the way. They say the first Tuesday after the first Monday of the month of November. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So what is Tuesday? Right? Tuesday's Mars Day.
Yep.
It's the day of Mars. So election day is a day about battle and conflict.
Yeah. Can I sneak something in here? You
Yes.
also we kind of brushed by that guy's name in the squirrel story, Mark Longo.
Mark
Not
Longo.
not only is the Longo Bard interesting, and I probably got a few subscriptions off it, so thanks, buddy. But Mark Longo, it's Mark too, like Mars. He was marked for death. They had a
Right.
mark. They put a mark out on this squirrel. He was the mark of the operation. The guy's name is Mark, and then of course Mark being Mars, and like you're saying, election day on a Tuesday, all hand in hand. Do I think Mark Longo was orchestrating any of this stuff? No. Either God's working this all out to, show us the symbols and archetypes, or the deep state chose him and honed in on a lot of this vocabulary, right? The double meanings. I'm sure there's a whole gematria salad bar on this whole thing that you
Right.
could get
Exactly.
into. But
Exactly. So the guy that basically set election day was John Tyler. I don't know if you knew that or not. President John Tyler.
no,
And he was born on March 29th, and he happens to be an Aries, which is ruled by Mars.
yeah,
So not only is election day on Tuesday, which is a Mars day, John Tyler, the president, was the one who wrote that into codification, who's also an Aries. And Scorpio was the
yeah,
original, Mars was the original ruler of Scorpio. So we have all these Mars overlays
yeah.
on election day, which is really, really interesting in a lot of ways. What is your take on that with like election being on Mars Day? Why not Moon Day? Why not Monday? Why Mars Day?
Yeah. Well, my first my first, guess would be that it's a competition. It's a fight.
Yeah,
Ultimately,
right.
it's a fight. It's a
Yeah,
showdown.
yeah,
It's a boxing match. Mano y mano.
yeah.
Um, or in Kamala Harris's case, uh, you know, uh,
Shimano.
ma- mano y castrato. But castrato's, I think she's a dude, by the way.
When you look at her childhood pictures, whoa,
This
looking a lot like a boy.
everything right here, like this area of her face, is huge. I mean, you could see her next to Maya Rudolph, who's not a small girl.
Yeah,
Her next to Maya Rudolph, and Maya Rudolph has a full jaw. She has a weak chin, but a full jaw. You can see how wide a woman's jowls are. Kamala Harris has jowls like you've never seen on a woman. I mean, this is like the jowls of a supermodel put on the horse of a donkey. Like huge, long, the size of the face is remarkable. And she's always doing this Michelle Obama, Sandra Bullock, Jennifer Aniston hairstyle where her ears, collarbone,
Are
and
covered. They're covered.
the arteries on the side of her neck are always covered because you would see the frame of a linebacker. She's just big. The jaw,
The thick. She's got a thick neck, dude.
yeah.
She's got a thick neck.
She's either dosing up with testosterone to be dominant in meetings or something, or she's using chemicals that are getting her beefed up. But I think she's a man. It's much more likely that they're following in this hermaphrodite Luciferian fetish.
Well, she has no children, right? She has no biological children.
Yeah.
And then with a lot of women, well, not a lot of women, but there's a fair number of women who don't have children, but they'll have records of abortions. And there's no like if Kamala Harris was really pro-abortion, she would talk about a time when she had an abortion.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there was a terrible thing and I had this thing happen to me and, because she lies about everything.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't she lie about being assaulted sexually? Right. And
Yeah.
and I had to have an abortion. Well, she didn't have one because there's no record of her ever having one. And there's probably a reason why. By the way, I've said this before in this show, since we're talking about Aries, Willie Brown, who was her mentor and paramour in San Francisco, had a thing for Thai boys, right? That was his thing.
Yeah.
And there was this woman who I used to go to her apartment sometimes in San Francisco, and I would do tarot readings for her. And Willie Brown lived on the same floor.
Wow.
And so she would watch him come home at night with a group of very pretty young Thais, right? So if you take that into account, and then you add the Kamala Harris factor, now it's looking like a brand. It's like the Willie Brown brand.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And when you hear her, number one, she has an Adam's apple, by the way. If you look closely, she's got a lot of activity going on right here. Okay.
Right.
But here, have you ever looked into the fixed stars that she's associated with?
Of course. I have her chart right up here, man.
Well, it's not necessarily her birth chart. It's the playing with her name, flipping it backwards. I'm sure you're aware of. There's
Amalek.
Yes, Sirah and Amalek.
Yeah.
Dude, what are the odds of that?
Yeah, it's very strange. And in fact, I got into this one day on one of my shows where, what's her name? She was in X-Men. She played Jean Grey. What's her name? The really pretty one. Anyway,
Jennifer Lawrence.
No.
Yeah, she's not pretty.
No, it's fuck, hold on. Anyway, this actress plays this character in an episode of Star Trek, and it's like the Next Generation, I think. And her name is Kamala. This character's name is Kamala, and her job is this is her like her. She belongs to a race of people, specifically women, that when they're born and hatch, they hatch very quickly. That the man that they're closest to, they bond completely with that man, right? They just bond completely with that man. So everything that man thinks about, wants, or needs, she becomes like the vessel for all those things. She becomes like the perfect mate for that man. And it's really odd because if you look at Harris's rise to the top, right? Whether you think she's a man or a woman or both, like that's exactly what she did with all these men along the way, right?
Yeah.
She figured out what their exact needs were, right? And she serviced those needs, whether it was Willie Brown or whether it was Montel Williams or whether it was Doug Emhoff, right? She became the thing that Famke Janssen is the actress's name. And so again, it's another weird kind of cinematic thing where there's this character named Kamala who's kind of this extraterrestrial, and all she does is just super bond with the man that she's with so that, you know, she could be in that man's life. Okay,
Yeah.
so we have the election, which is on Tuesday. It's a Mars day. In Scorpio, which is a Mars month, right? And we have John Tyler, who's the president, who's in Aries, who basically sets the day. So we have this complete overlay of Scorpio and Mars. And do you know what the largest star in Scorpio is? The brightest star in Scorpio?
I don't know. Is that what is it?
It's Antares.
Okay, yeah, that Antares, yeah.
Which is Ant Aries. Like Aries is so it's like competing with Mars. So Antares is competing with Mars. It's like this giant red star that is like the flagship of Scorpio. And Antares is really interesting. Really, really interesting. It's called the breast of Scorpio, or the breast of the scorpion. Right. So it's like almost like armor in the breast of the scorpion. I'm gonna throw this up here.
That's interesting because I noticed a lot of Anthony's and Andrews are Scorpios.
Interesting. Here we go. Let's check this out. Andrew means manly, by the way.
Right, like androgynous, anthropology. Yeah.
So here we go. The traditional name Antares is from the ancient Greek. How's your ancient Greek there, Longo?
Mine, not great.
Which means anti-Aries is what it means, or the rival of Mars. So,
right.
So Antares and Mars, are. So the interesting thing about Antares and so Orion also plays a huge role here, right? Because supposedly the Scorpion was set off against Orion in the sky, and so neither of them were in the sky at the same time together, right? Which is really kind of interesting as well. So these are some of the other names of Antares. Bilu Shah Ziri, the Lord of the Seed. Kakshisha, the creator of prosperity. Darlugal, the king. Masusar, the hero and the king. And Kakba Bur, the vermilion star. In Persia, Antares was known as Satevis, one of the 4 royal stars. So it plays a pretty prominent role in Scorpio. Right. And you can see it down here. It's a binary star, red and green on the Scorpion's body, the rival of Mars, spectral class. Antares in the constellation Scorpio is, as its name, Antares, of Martian nature. But to this Mars nature, powers of Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn are added. So it's like a super Mars, right? That's what Antares is. It's a giant gaseous star, right? But it also includes, all these other elements along with it right there. Specifically Jupiter, because it's so much bigger than Mars, right? And then it says this is an important star for military personnel and is said to convey mental alertness, strategic ability, and courage to make daredevils, especially if tied up with the midheaven ascendant Sun or Jupiter. So some interesting stuff here just in terms of people. So Antares is also connected to the archangels. So the prime star of Scorpio is Antares, meaning the rival to Mars. In the night sky, it is often more
Right.
visible than
Yeah.
Mars itself, right?
The archangels are considered to be in Christian like iconography. The four fixed signs of the zodiac are the four main archangels.
Right, right. Here with the archangel stars are Fomalhaut, Aldebaran, Regulus, Raphael, and now Antares Uriel, the city of Ur where Abraham was born. So Antares is now kind of moved into that pantheon of through Uriel, right? So it's interesting. You get down into some of the actual like positions of Antares, and some
Yeah.
people have some pretty interesting positions. So, for instance, the midheaven conjunct Antares, honor, preferment, good fortune, military honor, etc., etc. Pablo Escobar has a shit ton of planets conjunct Antares.
Wow.
Yeah. Then you have Adam Driver, who has Mercury and Uranus conjunct Antares. Anton LaVey.
Wow. Himmler, LaVey, and Escobar. That's a pretty
Wild, huh?
Yep.
And you can throw Abraham Lincoln in there. So descendants, the descendant is relationship, right? And you look at some of these people, and like Will Smith, like his relationships are a mess, right?
Phil Spector, talk about
and Phil Spector, right? And he kills that chick, right? And not
allegedly,
only that, allegedly, but he also beats the hell out of Ronnie Spector.
Yeah.
Right. And then Will Smith, and he has Jada Pinkett Smith, who dominates him, right? Yeah. Because the descendant is where the relationship comes in. And didn't Kristen Stewart, was she one of those women that went through like a gender reassignment? Did she go through something like that?
Say it again.
Which Kristen Stewart. Wasn't she in
she's an in-betweener. She's kind of a fluid type. I don't know what she really is, but I think she's still got all her factory equipment.
So this is the part of fortune conjunct Antares, and it brings poverty. So Jim Baker, who was the super mega pastor, he went from Christian rags to Christian riches to rags. Matt Dillon's got the part of fortune conjunct Antares, but Matt Dillon has always played tough guys, right? Like he's always played something with a real Antares force to it. Sure. And then Lovecraft had H.P. Lovecraft had Antares. Also, Arsenio Hall. Like, if you know the story of Arsenio Hall, I mean, that guy was flying high, right? Like, he was killing it. And then all of a sudden, he does this interview with what's his name, Louis Farrakhan, and that's it. He's done. He's done. He just completely like bottoms out. Sun conjunct Antares. Look at some of these people. There's Pablo Escobar again, William Blake, Winston Churchill.
Zoe Kravitz, man, she's very scorpionic. I don't know what her birthday is, but if that's where she gets that almost Plutonian scorpionic look to her, she's a jet black eyes, jet black features. Yeah.
Winston Churchill, who was a fucking warmonger.
Yeah.
Antares, 0.17 degrees conjunct
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate. And he's got Saturn conjunct Antares as well.
Yeah.
Britney Spears, Sun conjunct Antares. And then we have people who have Moon conjunct Antares. That's pretty intense. Very, very intense. Yeah. And then Nietzsche, Moon conjunct Antares.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting day for an election to take place, right?
Yeah.
When you have all these, not just Mars energies, but you have this Antares energy and all these other things that are packed in the Scorpio energy, which is related to Mars. It's a very, very intense day.
Can I throw in a bunch of the phonetic links to the word squirrel and peanut and Scorpio and Kamala, what is she? She's a Libra technically, but she's close
Yeah,
to Scorpio.
she's 27 degrees Libra. Yeah.
So, yes, but she's close to Scorpio, and it was like a doubling down of the Scorpio energy with Joe Biden and her. She's very fall time, dark, the onset of fall.
She is. She has Mercury in Scorpio too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, the squirrel thing, the word squirrel, all, as I've pointed out on my YouTube channel, all ska words go back to Scorpio. There's no flattering ska words. There's skill, and that's about it. You could be skilled in anything. You could be skilled in something terrible.
Right.
Scare, scour, scourge, scorch, scar, scrape, skank, skeet, skunk.
Mm-hmm. Skew's another one.
Yep. Scandal.
Yeah.
Scanty.
Scurrilous.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scoundrel.
Scoundrel.
There's almost no flattering ska words. Even disgusting, you can still see that phonetic.
You can hear it in there for sure.
Now with squirrel, even though that you're putting, it's a Q, it's still the same phonetic root. And in many languages, that would bounce around as a K or a C or a G. But squirrel is a Scorpio word as well. And, the language of the unconscious is puns. If there's one thing that Freud got right, it was that.
Right, the Freudian slip.
That our dream selves weave puns together. And it's one of the most powerful ways that we talk to ourselves. Our higher selves talk to ourselves through sleep is through puns. It's one of the reasons why people find puns so funny. The word funny means that something's punny, pun, fun with puns, phonetic, blah, blah, blah. Squirrel is a Scorpio word. They're quick, they're agile, they're obsessive, they're desperate, they are hoarders, they're obsessed, they are very attached to things. Squirrels are very scorpionic, believe it or not.
Yeah.
They're very fast twitch too. If you ever played sports with a Scorpio, man, they're
today is Colin Kaepernick's birthday, by the way.
Yeah, in my opinion, they're the most agile sign, and they're deadly on a sports field. But squirrels, very agile. They scurry. Another Scorpio word: scurry, skate.
Right. Yeah.
And so squirrel. Okay, squirrel. It's a Scorpio word. Mark, very Scorpio word. And then also you've got Peanut. His name's Peanut, right? Well, peanut is a very sexual word, right? People always do puns with the word peanut. If there's one sign that loves nuts, it's Scorpio. Scorpio rules, the double meaning of that word. And there you go. Squirrel, Longo, even Longo's a very sexual, like that's not why I came up with Dr. Longo. It's just my name rearranged, but I did think it was funny. And Longo, people joke and say like, it's a very phallic, like dirty joke almost. And there's a lot of double meanings.
What was it? Was it the mayor of, was it Pennsylvania, that town where Trump got assassinated? Was the mayor there named Longo?
Man, you're right. Yeah, there was a Longo in the news.
He was the mayor of that town.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Where they had the assassination attempt. Yeah, I pointed it out to you when I read that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we talked about Longo too.
Yeah.
That one. And I had another interesting run-in with a Longo where like 10 years ago, there was a guy with the last name Longo who endorsed, or he spearheaded this project to get a park renamed after a princess, an old princess, the original Pocahontas. Her name was Princess.
Oh yeah, you told me this story, I think. Yeah, that's a good story.
So that was a Longo too, and he was like one of the only people to go to bat for this secret ancient history in Florida. And he was a Longo. Yeah, squirting. Yeah, good one, Peter. Squirting is a Scorpio word too. If you doubted the connection there, squirting is
Right.
squirrel, squirt.
What about okay, here's one. Maybe it is slightly dismissive, but perhaps not. What about squire? What about squire?
There's a sexual connotation with squires too.
Yeah.
And squander, squire, sire, to sire children.
Squaw. What about squaw?
Squaw, there you go. Who you're partnered up with, who you're shacked up with is your
Right.
your
Right.
squaw.
Right.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
But a squire is helping you kill people, and they cover your back. They cover
Right.
your rear end. That's a squire,
Oh,
So
right. Then there's esquire, which is a little bit different. Let's just for shits and giggles, let's pop in Harris's chart because I have it here.
totes.
Let's do that because I was looking at it and I realized that she has Antares aspects in her chart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. Okay, so let me just do this. Where are we?
Squid, thank you. Yeah, people for people who are denying this, or maybe don't see the strength of the connection between the words squirrel and Scorpio. Yeah, good commenters here in the chat. Very
No,
smart.
we got the best.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, here, squirrel, squirt, sketchy, like people are saying, but also squid. So anything with 8 legs ruled by Scorpio, because Scorpio is the 8th sign of the zodiac. Spider, to spy, Scorpio, spy, spider. Octopus, of course, very smart, talented animals, genius animals, very scorpionic, dangerous, murderous intelligence. And then squid, eight legs, and very, not always 8 legs, but I think usually 8 legs. And they are also genius. They're, octopuses are just glorified squids, or vice versa. But
ask people how they feel about school sometimes as well.
School, yeah, that's a Scorpio word too.
Yeah. So we got Harris's chart here, and there's Antares.
Squinty.
Right
Scorpios
there.
are squinty, very often
They're
squinty.
very squinty-eyed. Very
Yeah.
squinty-eyed, yeah. So Harris has Pallas and Juno conjunct Antares.
Wow.
And this is in her 6th house, which is like everyday work.
Well, Juno conjunct Antares you could see as childlessness too, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Juno being like a nurse.
Birth and fertility. And even in the 6th house, right? Like it's very utilitarian. It's not like a 5th house Juno or anything like that. And then with Pallas conjunct Antares, to me, this is like the eyes on the palace, right? Getting to like the top of the food chain or the pecking order, right? Because Pallas is all about pattern recognition, and it's almost as if it's like a looking glass in some ways into the future. So this is planning with Pallas and Antares. The other thing that she has is this gets into the neck, and what you were talking about, right? Is she has Jupiter in Taurus.
Oh, that's a good point.
Which is the big neck, but it's also conjunct Algol, which is this fixed star associated with hangings and lynchings and operations around the neck.
Yeah.
So that could be the trimming of the Adam's apple, right? Or something that would, in effect, hide it or obscure it, especially in the 12th house.
Totally.
Now the key to defeating Antares is on the other side of the chart, and that's Aldebaran, right? And Aldebaran is the bullseye, right?
Yeah.
It's the bullseye, and Aldebaran is also it has to do with like planning and strategy. It's like
Yeah.
the sign. It's like the sign of the general. By the way, Prince William has Mercury exactly conjunct Aldebaran in his chart. So he has the aspect of theoretically a great general, right? With Mercury and Aldebaran. Now Trump, I believe, has planets around Aldebaran. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's also the principal star of Indo-European Aryan peoples as well. That the Third Reich was very into Aldebaran, and
Right.
of course, all these Aryan peoples spread around Europe and Eurasia. Their principal star that they liked the most was often Aldebaran.
So Trump has Uranus with fixed stars. It's usually should be within about 2 degrees of the fixed star, whatever planet it is. So Trump has kind of a wide conjunction with Uranus in Aldebaran, which is right here, right there. So there's all of Trump's Gemini planets without he has Priapus conjunct Aldebaran, and I haven't spent a lot of time with Priapus to really understand its meaning in the chart. So it's something I've got to wrap my head around a bit more. Yeah. Based on the astrology, this is Trump's election to win based on the astrology alone, right? Just based on the astrology.
Yeah.
But we know that sometimes the hand of man gets involved in these things.
Well, astrology usually has dominion over earthly affairs, but in this case, the dominion might be coming from somewhere else. Yeah,
right. The dominion.
The dominion. Who knows?
Yeah. So, all right. Put your Nostradamus cap on.
Yeah.
All right. So, how do you see this thing going down on Tuesday?
It's hard to say. Of course, it's hard to say. I'd like for there to be a Trump victory. I'm definitely not going to be surprised if they pull a, you didn't actually win type of deal. I think that the support is there. Just surveying my friends, I know. If it was 50-50, if my friends were 50-50 conservative last election, now it's definitely 75-25. That spell, that fear, the phobia of Trump is worn off, and so many people are ready to vote with common sense again. That being said, they can always spin the election. I think Trump will win, but I think that there will be circumstances after that it's a drawn out election. That's another thing with the Longo word. Maybe we're going to see a elongated election process, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In 2000, when they had the hanging chads in Florida, right? That's the last time. Well, it's second to last time. Jupiter was in Gemini in 2000 when they had the hanging chads. And Jupiter is in Gemini again, and it's retrograde during this election. So we have the same kind of, not completely, but very similar hanging chad astrological alignment that we had in the year 2000.
Interesting.
Yeah. In 2012, during the 2012 election, there are people who actually believe that Mitt Romney won the 2012 election and that there was actually some voter stuff going on in 2012.
Sure.
Because people had grown tired of Obama's act. It was like, okay, we voted for him. We had a black president. we don't really like him very much, so let's do something different, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, let me ask you another question. This is really fascinating. This whole kind of inversion thing, right? Like now all of a sudden, Kamala Harris is surrounded by Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, George Bush, Mitt Romney, right? Like all these, freaking neocons,
Yeah, it's hilarious.
right? And then Trump is surrounded by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, right? Like there's this weird kind of inversion thing that's happened over this very brief period of time, which also feels kind of Aquarian in some ways too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. RFK is, you could look at the whole QAnon thing and say this was the plan all along. It's almost like QAnon prophecies have come true. It's just, 4 years later than people thought they would. RFK came around and his support meant a lot. There's a lot of undecided people who worship the Kennedys. And yeah, this is like a QAnon wet dream, right? To have Elon Musk fluorides coming out of the water. And I don't like Elon Musk one bit. Uh, not a huge fan of Robert F. Kennedy either. I think that there's
Yeah.
that you could do a little something better than that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you,
Cheryl, please don't. Cheryl, please don't divorce me. I promise.
Cheryl. Yeah. I'll tell you who I do like, though. I'll tell you who I do like. I like Nicole Shanahan. I
Who's
like
that?
this one. She was the one that was his vice president, right? And she's come out now and she's flipped. She was a Democrat. So what's interesting about Nicole Shanahan is that she's a Libra, and a Trump, who's a Gemini, right, with 3 planets in Cancer, and then you have Kennedy, right? So you almost have Kennedy and Trump in opposition with each other astrologically, and then you have this Nicole Shanahan, who's kind of like the bridge, the Libran bridge between the two of them. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting from an astrological standpoint. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Well, any other words of wisdom for the next few days?
If the last 4 years taught us anything, it's that you can take the worst possible candidate, slap them in there, and the world's still going to be okay. The world's not going to fall apart. We live in a good country with a good head on its shoulders. Believe it or not, the Illuminati's number one weapon is convincing you the wheels are falling off, everything's coming to a crashing, screeching halt. The rapture is one day away. Everything's going to be fine. Life's going to go on. Even if Kamala gets in there and it's a worst case scenario, we're going to be just fine. And I think people were too entitled. The Trumpers felt too entitled to a victory last time. And it was a reality check. It's a reality check. 4 years went by. Terrible leadership. Things are bad. It is pretty grim, but it's not the end of the world. And if it happens again, it won't be the end of the world. But
Well,
I think Trump will be the last president. Ideally,
I agree with you.
I think we're going to see a little bit more of a republic situation rather than a democracy. Yep. We're going to lean more in. I think, dare I say, I think Florida will become the political nerve center of the United States. I think that the draining of the swamp, that plan would result in a recentering down into Florida, right? I'm old world Florida. Of course, I'm going to talk about Florida. That America, the United States, began in Florida. Okay. And I think that we're going to return to Florida in terms of where the cockpit of the United States is going to be. Florida's the cockpit of the United States. And I think there's going to be Donald Trump's two older sons, they're not fit for leadership. They don't have a good head on their shoulders for that. I think they're great guys in other regards, but they're not charismatic leaders. They're not wise, sagacious. How do you say that? Sagacious.
They're both Capricorns, by the way.
Yeah, they're too dry and they don't have enough riz, as the kids are saying.
Right.
Baron, however, I'm not just saying this because of all the rabbit holes and conspiracy theories. Baron will be a great leader of men.
You know who he reminds me of?
Who?
Baron reminds me of Charlemagne.
Oh, yeah.
Not Charlemagne the God, Charlemagne from Europe.
Right.
Because if you know anything about Charlemagne,
Sure.
his family were outsiders, right? They were not royalty. They were not landed. And they were actually able to exert enough influence through power and trade to ultimately get a seat at the table.
Mhm.
And then Charlemagne changes the course of Europe and the entire course of history with his rule over France. So that alone kind of casts him in a very similar light. Like the Trumps, like I'm sure that there's like some bloodline with Trump, just like any of these people. But Trump does not kind of exude the same kind of sort of bloodline, like neon that Kennedy or the Roosevelts or some of these other. I mean, he's an outsider, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what Charlemagne's family was. They were outsiders, and they were very good at taking over places like, the Lombards, and and the thing that was really great, interesting about Charlemagne's people is how they managed the areas that they actually wound up kind of overtaking. Like they were able to bring them into the system, and they were actually able to profit more under the rule of Charlemagne and his family than they had before, which was really good for them. So that's what and I think Charlemagne was really tall too, if I'm not mistaken, like Baron. So yeah, that makes sense. And Baron's born on the very last day of the zodiac, 29 degrees Pisces.
Yeah, what's his birthday again?
I believe it's March
19th.
I think it's March 19th. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean equinox. It's close enough to the equinox where he could be like a charismatic leader type. Sometimes you see those equinox babies, just like a solstice baby. They can have a lot of X factor in them. But
that's me, baby. That's me.
Yeah. But with Donald Trump, I've been talking with my friends. Words of wisdom would be this: I think you do a really good job, and your community knows what's up when it comes to politics. A lot of my subscribers and a lot of like the younger truthers feel like they're getting back at the Illuminati by not voting. They feel like they're fighting the system by not voting, or that they're somehow complying to Illuminati control by just going in and voting. They get too freaked out, way too paranoid about it.
Well, there's a lot of peer pressure to not vote. That's the other side of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of peer pressure.
Of course. And I would say that we need to go out and vote, and that Plato, again, we always think we're stumbling onto new problems. No, all the problems have been solved through great men that have been on Earth here before us. Plato addressed people who scoff at politics. People think, oh, the world's so bad today. Everyone's lying. It's all corrupt. Politicians are so corrupt. I wish we could go back to ancient Greece when things were just perfect cotton candy and butterflies, and one vote equaled one vote, and it's a pipe dream. There's always corruption. The same 7 virtues and 7 vices are bubbling up from within people, no matter what. And Plato addressed this. He has a whole dialogue dedicated to political apathy, feeling like they were tackling these issues 2,000 years ago, more, where there's a dialogue and there's these 2 people saying, oh, Why would I vote? There's an election coming up or a new, committee coming up, and they're saying, why vote? That person's corrupt. We know there's a history of corruption there. Why bother? They scoff and say, it's a joke. Playing with the votes, it's a joke. Don't even worry about it. And the teaching, the lesson there is pretty much Plato says, well, the world is built of spheres, right? There's the political sphere, there's the financial sphere, there's the scientific, there's the medical sphere. You may not be an expert in every sphere, but there is an expertise and a reality and dimensions to every sphere. And you need to know enough about each sphere. You need to be involved in each sphere. So only so much as to where you can't get ripped off or scammed or fooled in that sphere.
Yeah.
No matter how above you think you are, it's okay if you look at the politicians and say, well, they're down here. They drink fluoride and eat, Trump goes to Burger King, and it's okay if you say, well, I'm up here and Donald Trump's down here. But they're not satisfied with that. They have to say, well, not only am I better than them, I'm not even going to validate that lowly kingdom that they're doing all this hard work in, that we're reaping the benefits of, keeping the lights on and stuff. No matter how above something you think you are, you have an obligation, especially as a man, to represent yourself in that sphere. Even if you think it's ridiculous, lowly, corrupt, whatever, if you just simply bury your head in the sand and turn a blind eye, you're corrupt. You've succumbed fully to the corruption, right? So that would be my message to any apathetic voters who feel like they're succumbing to the system by not voting. And also, we have all these R words. There's women who get R worded by these illegal immigrants. This has happened twice in the last year, just in my hometown right here. Mexican immigrants. Florida's not even attached to Mexico. How did Mexican immigrants get to Florida? That's not a common boat ride, by the way. We have Cubans and Haitians here that come on boats. Mexico.
You have Venezuelans now too.
They took a Greyhound bus to get here. That's not a little hop a fence journey, They commit an R word. 2 separate women. One of them was a full R word abducted into a van, not just a assault. And if you're not voting, you're literally consenting that. You're not consenting to Illuminati overthrow by voting. By not voting, you're consenting to whatever leader is going to allow that to keep happening. So I don't get it.
It's really interesting because what you bring up is something very subjective in a lot of ways. I mean, there's an objective overview that you have with this, but it's also very, very subjective. For instance, the R word that you spoke about, right, in 1980, when I voted for the very first time, that wasn't even part of the political dialogue, right? Like a lot of the needle has moved, right? The ball has moved. The cheese has moved. When I was young, voting was the American political system was a complete fucking drag. I mean, you had choices between people like Bill Clinton and George Bush, and just a variety of lackluster losers, right?
Totally.
And if you were, I've talked about this before, if you were a little outside and you didn't believe in the system, or you thought that it was being run by a bunch of corrupt, communist, socialist pedophiles, the type of people who were the spokespeople for those kinds of things were completely branded and labeled as quacks. And there was this guy that used to pitch for the San Diego Padres named Eric Shao, and he was an amazing pitcher. He was great. Eric was great. He was also kind of a virtuoso musician, and he grew up completely misunderstood. Well, he and some of his buddies on the San Diego Padres went to John Birch Society meetings, right? And then all of a sudden they were automatically labeled as racists and fascists and Nazis, and they really weren't. What they were is they were concerned, like these guys could see around the corner a little bit, right? And they saw what was coming. And this was the only organization at that time that was mainstream enough to get literature and try to inform other people about what was going on in our world. And very quickly, Eric Shaw was about as canceled as you could get in Major League Baseball. So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if you were to have kind of an outside opinion about what was going on, the people that were sort of the bellwether for that weren't always considered to be the most reputable people by society, right? Then you have like at the most, I would say, kind of politically corporate integrated position, you'd have somebody like Pat Buchanan, who's this paleo conservative, but he, and Pat had some interesting ideas, and he argued against people like Churchill and his role in World War II. But even Pat was like kind of uncool in his own way. He was a great speechwriter, but he was kind of uncool. And you have Ross Perot, who comes along and basically sets the record straight about NAFTA and about basically this unhinged kind of globalist economy. And he looks like a little lawn gnome or something, right? So these people who would represent the voice of the people often came with great defect on some level. True. And that all changed with Trump.
Yes.
Trump changed the entire landscape when it came to somebody who at least spoke to them in the same way that these other people did.
Yeah.
But with like megawatts, like megawatt differences between them.
That's what's crazy about people who feel like people who don't want to vote today and feel like they're conquering the Illuminati by doing it. It doesn't get better. And I don't want to tell people who to vote for. I think you should clearly vote for Donald Trump, but that's not why I'm harping on about this. I want people to realize it's never going to get better than this. Like you're saying, there's never going to be a fresher breath of air in the political space than Donald Trump. If you're not happy with the suggestion that V's, the Maxine with a V, that those do damage, that fluoride's coming out of the water, it should come out, that when he gets asked, are you fighting a cabal of blood drinking vampires? What does he say? He didn't say no. He didn't say never hurt. He didn't say, what are you talking about? He said, is that supposed to be a bad thing?
Right.
It was $1 million answer. It made everyone happy, made them look like a fool. I mean, how do you get that class, the grace? You're never going to, what do people want? Alex Jones running the country? You want someone who's going to shout every conspiracy theory you've ever heard of as loud as they can every time they get in front of a camera? That's not a leader. That's a cheerleader. That's an Alex Jones. That's a right. Trump has a cool head on his shoulders, but he's also open to all this wacky woo-woo conspiracy theory stuff. It's never going to get better than that combination. It's also why I think Barron's going to be good, is Barron will be open to all the mysticism. He will be into, the philosopher king mentality rather than the businessman king mentality.
Right. I'm telling you, the kid is Charlemagne. That's what he feels like to me. He feels like Charlemagne. By the way, the garbage truck thing was the funniest fucking thing I've ever. Not only was that funny, but his retelling of the story with it was just like hilarious. Yeah. And what was really fascinating is that when he was in the garbage truck, he knew exactly what he was doing. The press, who of course he has an antagonistic relationship with, they literally had to go to the garbage truck and look up to him and ask him their questions, right? And he looked down upon the press right, in his little garbage vest from his garbage perch.
Yeah.
And it was one of the great troll moments in history.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Also,
great troll moment.
yeah. Also, garbage is a Libra Scorpio word. Garb, meaning clothing, of course, is Libra. And
Right.
then the cusp into Scorpio would be trash, like what's obsolete or discarded, or so it's a Scorpio uh, occupation, um, working with trash and waste. Um, so that's another Scorpio theme coming up. But
Yeah. Also, refuse, right?
yeah,
Refuse. And I think of a Scorpio as a sign that refuses things.
oh yeah,
Like Scorpio says no,
hmm
right? Sagittarius says yes. Scorpio says no.
also Libra ruling waste, meaning
Hmm.
the waste and the waste, right?
Right, because it's halfway between the lower torso and the upper torso,
Hmm.
which puts it at the midpoint of the chart as well. What do you think of? And I was thinking about this. This is like fucking like meta alchemy. This is
Okay.
meta alchemy. Kamala Harris starts her campaign off,
Hmm.
and it is just she's dancing. Right, it's all about joy and how we're going to turn the page, and she's just laughing and dancing like a breath of fresh air. And then, of course, at that point, Trump is theoretically coming out of this assassination attempt. Right,
Hmm.
it's very very dark, and then something happens. Like there's this crossfade with these campaigns, so that by the time we get to where we are now with Trump, like what is he doing? He's joking around in garbage trucks and at McDonald's, and he's laughing and he's having fun, right? And what is Harris doing? Harris got super dark. She got angry and she was shaking her fist all the time at Trump and his followers, and he's Hitler, he's Stalin, he's
Hmm.
Mao, all rolled into one. It's like there was this complete alchemical transformation with her campaigns,
Yeah.
and she starts off one way in one direction, and she ends up in a really different place, a really dark place. And then Trump comes out of that weird chaos of Pennsylvania, and now he's just joking with people, and he's having a very
Yeah.
fun time of it, right?
Yeah. Seems like he's lost 30 to 50 pounds too. He looks really thin. He's
No, that was just the garbage fest, man. That made him thinner.
no, in general, he's been looking very thin and trim.
I wonder if that's RFK's influence in his life. I wonder if RFK's giving him some enzymes or something.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
he's a
RFK,
he's a he's a Carno Trump, by the way. I believe his favorite food is steak well done. I think that's what he eats.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, they say his butler said he loves steak cooked till it's like rubber with
Right.
ketchup.
Yeah.
And he said every chef that he's ever had to work for him has either quit or swallowed their pride because he doesn't want their talent. He doesn't want their nice steak. He wants hockey puck steak with ketchup.
Right.
He's also, of course, big on fast food. Big on fast food. He actually believes in the benefits of fast food. He's not just like a lazy eater. He could have his chef mock up a McDonald's burger if he wanted to. He believes in the benefits. He's almost like on the Ray Pete uh, wavelength, where junk food is good, sugar is good. It's feeling bad about, it's stressing about what you eat is the worst, diet of anything. But he believes in cleanliness in food, and he's a germ phobe.
He's a
Trump is.
germaphobe. Yeah.
He's pretty OCD about cleanliness and hygiene, and he reveres the hygiene of fast food restaurants. And I'm with him on this. Believe it or not, you might think of fast food as bad for you, but they're not dirty. those places don't stay open. If there's a smidge of mold under the ice machine or the soda machine, that's shut down and that's a whole chain down the drain, you know. Trump
Right.
says this and he says you can trust McDonald's to have cleaner food than your neighborhood, you know, bar, your neighborhood bar hasn't cleaned the ice machine in a decade. You know, the the restaurant down the street just as likely to get you're more likely to get food poisoning from them than for a long time he's kind of been on this he believes in the benefit of fast food because it's simple and it's ultra processed. You know about this? He believes that ultra processed food is good for you because it's easy on digestion. Yes, there's probably some chemicals you don't want in your body, but it's almost like pre-digested. It's
Right.
almost like it's been chewed up a little bit first. And do I exalt his diet or do I recommend it? No. Does he perhaps have maybe I like to think in my mind that he has a little Tesla med bed that he just lays down in every night and it just undoes all the burger damage and you know the but I will
I did
say he likes Coca-Cola and
diet
Coca-Cola.
diet Coca-Cola.
Well, when you see him if you see him at a party, he'll drink Coca-Cola if he's feeling a little loose or if he wants to, you know.
If he really wants that sugar rush, he'll hit
Yeah,
the regular stuff, right?
he does drink regular. He definitely is addicted to Diet Coke, but he does drink regular too. And I think that there's something to this. I'm a proponent of Coca-Cola myself.
Hmm.
I think that if you're eating a standard American diet, something like Coca-Cola is almost a must because it's going to break down all that ultra processed food.
Right.
It almost renders, I'm like kind of joking, but it almost renders everything in your stomach back to fruit. It just
Mhm.
mega doses the contents of your stomach with sugar,
Right.
acids, tangy, you know, kind of renders the American diet back into fruit slop in the stomach. You can kind of which is very easily digestible. And it's a digestive aid to Coca-Cola. It's non-GMO. People don't give them enough credit for that. Pepsi's for poor people, you know, undesirables that want to get exterminated. You know that Coca-Cola is the drink of billionaires. It's the drink of geniuses. It's the drink of you know, Babe Ruth was a Coca-Cola addict too. You know, great athletes, great thinkers, great. So I know we can all probably list off 5 things we don't like about Coca-Cola, but has anyone given any thought to the benefits of this stuff? I mean, it's the number one drink in the world for a reason, and this ties into the Donald Trump is obsessed indirectly, much like John D. Rockefeller is. It's unspoken, it's not acknowledged. He's obsessed with the native inhabitants of Florida, or at the very least their lifestyle.
Right.
Donald Trump, not only his ancient Aryan ancestors who roamed the steppes of Eurasia, you know, just like his geographical predecessors in Florida, the inhabitants of Florida would cover themselves with red ochre body paint. Well, Donald Trump covers himself with red ochre, not red ochre, but he covers himself with red body paint. Orange man good. The ancient inhabitants of Florida would bury their loved ones into Indian mounds, burial mounds. Well, Donald Trump buried his ex-wife, or his ex-wife was buried in a burial plot in a golf course, which are usually built on Indian mounds. And what else is there? Coca-Cola. Why does he like Coca-Cola? Well, the native inhabitants of Florida, 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, they've been making an extremely caffeinated beverage known as black drink for thousands of years. And black drink was like the day-to-day. It was a healing tonic. It was the sports drink of the Florida Indians. It was the wake you up coffee in the morning. This is actually a huge conspiracy. We'd still be drinking this stuff if coffee wasn't such the big moneymaker that it is. The powers that be sided with coffee instead of Yopon Holly, but Coca-Cola has this legacy in the Southeast United States of the black drink. It's a black drink. And Donald Trump loves that stuff. It's one of my guilty pleasures. I love Coca-Cola. I think it's compatible with the holistic lifestyle, believe it or not. So,
Have you ever seen these double cheeseburgers that they have found after 7 years?
yeah. Yeah. Just two.
So here's my theory. I think Trump realizes that these foods are chock full of preservatives, right? And I think what he has figured out is how to absorb the preservatives in the food
Yeah.
so that he can look like a 7-year-old double cheeseburger, like in human form, right?
Yeah. 100%.
By the way, David Rockefeller, the notorious David Rockefeller, died on Barron Trump's birthday, which I always thought was really interesting.
Hmm.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
that long ago either. It was 2017. So another interesting. Have you read the or seen the Eversole Lockwood books? The
Yes,
story.
we sell them in the store.
Yeah.
I haven't read them. I've skimmed through them when we first got them here at the store. They're not long. They're pretty short. It's yeah, interesting stuff. I'm a believer. I don't think the Illuminati's behind it. I think that God is behind it. People are always so quick to eliminate God from the equation. Oh, if there's some gematria in this news headline, or if there's some synchronicity in these events,
Right.
must have been the New World Order. Must have been the Illuminati. God clearly doesn't have that control, and God clearly doesn't love sending messages and subtle signals to his followers. I disagree with that. I think it's usually God arranging this gematria.
And the Illuminati's taking the credit for it, right? That's what's happening.
It could be, or they're copying his style.
Yeah.
They're hot on the trail of the gematria, the arms race for gematria in headlines, with news events. But whatever. I forgot what I was going to say. But
that's all right. Have you had your Coca-Cola today?
Yeah, I think I've had 2 actually today.
So, are you a Mexican Coke guy? Do you like the Mexican Coke?
That's a good point. It's a really good point. So I avoided Coke for a long time because I thought it was GMO. That was my only, reservation. That was my only issue with Coca-Cola, was that it was GMO'd. I'd always assumed that because Michelle Obama and the whole fucking, healthy food psyop, they always throw Coca-Cola under the bus.
Right.
They always Coca-Cola, people think it's just the most GMO'd poisonous thing on the planet. It's just ignorance. I've done the homework. I've done the research. Coca-Cola is not GMO'd. But nonetheless, that whole time I would reward myself with a Mexican Coke. When I was a really strict vegan for a pretty good amount of time. I went 5 years with no soda whatsoever.
Right.
None. And I didn't want it. I wasn't holding back from it. But I'd have every once in a while, or maybe at the end of that 5 years or before, I would have Mexican Cokes, and I liked Mexican Cokes. I knew that they were non-GMO. But then recently, when I found out that Coca-Cola was non-GMO, and I started getting into the health benefits of corn, and how corn syrup is usually a really bad thing that you have to worry about. With Coca-Cola, maybe you're sensitive to sugar. I'm not. I love sugar. It does good for me. And I started trying American Cokes like a year ago. I started drinking Coke again. I'm a vegetarian, by the way. I'm always a vegetarian.
Right.
That I just see people are confused. I'm always a vegetarian. But vegans are usually retarded. Vegans do it for emotional reasons alone. Vegans are abstaining from what they want to eat. They're just not letting themselves eat what they want to eat. You know, it's a different path, whatever. Coca-Cola, Mexican Coke is healthier. They use cane sugar. It's got 2 less ingredients, I think. So it's a little bit better for you, or at least it seems a little bit better for you. I started getting back into the normal Coke, and I would try them and I'd taste them and I'd see, do I actually feel any different if I try one versus the other? Not much of a difference. But here's the kicker. I started thinking, hang on. Oh, and by the way, Coca-Cola is usually bottled in the Southeast United States, either near Atlanta or Ocala, Florida, are
Right.
the two main bottling plants.
Atlanta's
And
a huge hub.
in Tennessee, they've got Atlanta, Ocala, Florida,
Mhm.
and then someplace in Tennessee. And in Florida, it's all about the spring water. Coca-Cola takes spring water from Florida. So if you're lucky, you might be getting a little of that fountain of youth in there. And that's why people used to love Coca-Cola. It used to be better, I hear. And that was probably that Florida spring water. I gave it this X factor, this radioactive, nutrient or whatever. But then I started thinking, okay, so American Coke is bottled in America in the Southeast United States, some of the cleanest, purest water on planet Earth. Where's the Mexican water coming from? You mean to tell me that's Mexican water in Mexican Cokes? I think I'll go with the American one. You can keep your cane sugar. You're talking about Mexican, water from Mexico. I'm good.
I drank plenty of Topo Chico, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is now owned by Coca-Cola. By the way,
Yeah, and I think Topo Chico is the most fluorided bottled water, glass water, or whatever they're bottled in.
the other one that I really like is this Agua Mineragua, which is the same people that do the Arritos stuff, right? The cheap Mexican sodas. Cool, man. Coca-Cola, breakfast of champions, right there.
Yeah, I don't
All
drink
right.
it for breakfast, but orange
Uh,
juice, everybody. Orange juice for breakfast.
Have you ever done a orange juice Coca-Cola combo? Have you ever played around with that?
That sounds disgusting. No.
There's orange peel in Coca-Cola, isn't there? It's part of the recipe. It's part of the recipe.
Man, Robert, it's such a crazy rabbit hole. People love to shit on Coca-Cola for no reason. It's like, why is Christianity the #1 religion on planet Earth? Because it's just fraudulent pedophiles, screwing each other and ripping people off? There's clearly more to it than that. There's clearly a value in it that God wants distributed across planet Earth. Same thing about cigarettes. Do I love cigarettes? No. But it was clearly God's destiny, God's design to have cigarettes spread to every corner of the globe. Tobacco, it's a libation. Coca-Cola is a
God feels the same way about McDonald's as well.
Well, who knows? But McDonald's, I like McDonald's because they treat their Coca-Cola like the valuable
commodity. It's a valuable commodity.
Potion that it is. They alchemically seal them in like stainless steel tanks, and Coca-Cola McDonald's transports their Coca-Cola in a very unique way that's interesting. But to your point about orange peel, dude, the ingredients of Coca-Cola are going to blow people's mind. Okay, there's corn syrup, there's phosphoric acid, there's water, spring water, usually from the Southeast United States. And then what? All those natural flavors, people really don't know. I've been in the food industry, by the way. I've worked in a commercial kitchen. So I know what the labeling on when you look at the ingredients, it's not always what people think it is. When you see natural flavor, that's not there to sneak in artificial flavorings. It can be, but when you see natural flavors, what that is, it's a system of It's a system of protecting the recipe. So
Right.
natural,
It's an umbrella label is what it is.
yeah, natural flavors is there to so that as long as it's a non-allergen, you know, you don't have to disclose an ingredient, um, unless it's like the number one ingredient or there's certain stipulations. But
Right. Right.
there's
It's a way of keeping things proprietary.
yeah, so natural flavors encompasses like seven or eight really really interesting flavorings. Let's just go over them. Everyone can go look up the recipe for Coca-Cola too. They kind of dispute the exact amounts, but here's what it is. Coca-Cola is pretty much spring water from the southeast United States, and then it is phosphoric acid, which people don't love it, but whatever. And then it's lime juice, lemon juice, it's molasses, it's uh, trace amounts, small amounts of cinnamon, nutmeg. Some would say vanilla, even a little bit too. And what's the main one? The main one's lime juice, essential oil of neroli, essential oil of lavender. Lavender is the main flavor and smell in Coca-Cola.
Interesting.
So the taste is mostly lime juice. It's mostly like a sweet limeade that's dyed black, or a sour limeade, sweet limeade that's dyed black, carbonated. And it's neroli, which is orange blossom. It's like a citrus uh, extract of citrus. And yeah, anyone who's had stomach issues knows Coca-Cola is right up there with ginger ale for helping with stomach issues. And yeah, the natural flavors in Coca-Cola make it one of the most it's like royalty. It's a drink for royalty. I mean, these are things that if you were sourcing them on their own to take day to day, it would be pretty expensive. This
Right.
is,
Right.
but
I've heard that there's still trace elements of the coca leaf in Coca-Cola.
yeah, apparently, what do they say? Coca-Cola has the only rights in America to use this deactivated coca leaf. So
Yeah.
there's not even really something to compare it to where you say, oh well, it's fully deactivated, or there's a little bit of that in there. I think there is a little bit of an active ingredient in there.
That's what I think too. Yeah. And that's something that these other Coke beverages don't have. Like that's the thing they don't have, right? Like you won't find that in Pepsi.
Mhm. Oh, Pepsi's, by the way, this is one of the this ties into the election, dude. Dude, this is like, people are so convinced that if there's two options, they must be 50-50. They must be, you know, um, mirroring each other in most attributes. This applies to Democrat, Republican. People always love to jack themselves off with two sides of the same coin. The Republican Democrat, they're just two sides of the same coin, bro. It's just a psyop. Both sides are controlled by the same people. And I'm like, okay, yeah. How about you rip your brain out of your head, throw it in a blender, because that only has two sides too. It's okay to have a duality in things. It's okay to have a spitballing back and forth. That's the founding fathers were, they were esoteric, occult minded people. They'd studied the human body. They knew decision making in the brain relies on a dualistic process, back and forth, logical, emotional. And that's what we have in the political system. Well, also, it's given away when you look at Baphomet. Baphomet tells us what the system is like. Sure, it's right and left. Sure, right and left. But make no mistake about it. Right leads up and left leads down. This is not just lateral, oh, I like softball and you like basketball. let's agree to disagree. This is, you know, mankind's legacy that goes upward or it goes downward. And sure, it's right and left, but it's like it's like a spiral staircase. It's like music. You can't restrict it to a lateral plane. Whatever. You asked about Pepsi. The whole thing about, why this matters is you can't just say Coke and Pepsi. Their universes apart. Pepsi was pushed on the poor. It was pushed on black people. They even write articles about this today where they literally think it was put out to what's the word? Sterilize black people. That Pepsi was a megadose of forever chemicals. It was like sewage water, GMO to high hell, and it doesn't have the same naturally derived flavorings. It's a close artificial copy of Coca-Cola. So, who knows?
Well, I guess on Tuesday we'll be choosing between Pepsi and Coke in some ways.
Well, Coke is red, and Coke is the right way. It's right. It's red. It's conservative. It's Pepsi's left. It's blue. It's.
Well, that wasn't always the case. You go back and watch the 1980 election when Reagan just absolutely crushes Jimmy Carter, and the Republicans had the blue states. It was blue. In 1980, it was blue. And somewhere between 1980 and 2000, the color shifted. It's really a pretty interesting transformation and story.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, there was one thing that I wanted to get in there was when we're talking about the Gnostic stuff. This all ties into politics too. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it does.
The Lord of this world, the liberal outlook on life is a very Gnostic one. That humans are a blight, that we're a burden on nature, that we should just be eradicated. That would be good for nature altogether. But also that carbon is evil.
Right.
Carbon is evil. Okay, well, how does this all tie into the Lord of the world and this stuff? We glossed over the political animals too, the elephant and the donkey. We've talked about, I'm sure, elephant being ruled by Jupiter, especially through Cancer, where we get the word conservative. The donkey, the down key, the low key, a Saturnian animal. It's a horse, sure, but it's a restricted horse. It's a Saturnine horse. It's restricted and inhibited. The donkey, the down key, it's whatever. But the mule is where we get Mulek, malice, Amalek from the Bible, Moloch. This is all the same word. Moloch, Malek, malice. And guess what? How does this all tie together with a nice ribbon? The Gnostic outlook on life is the molecular outlook of life. That we're all in molecule. You don't see the wave. This is a Gnostic prison. This is a soul trap. If you're only living in the molecules, you will feel imprisoned in molecules. That's why Satan is the Lord of this world. If we're saying this world, matter's all molecules, we get the word molecule from Saturn. Molech.
Right.
Molech. Right. Molecule to be, material world. Okay. That's the whole spiel.
Well, that's an important piece to just tie that all off. And because what you're basically saying is that the body is a trap, and that everything related to the body, which is an extension of the body in this world, is also a trap. And it's like, how do people live like that? This is the thing that's really like blown my mind, right? Like, if you really, really believe that, then why are you here? And that gets back to the original piece that we were talking about, which is like things like mass suicide and the death cults. And I guess we could probably make a very short leap and say that Gnosticism is a death cult, and I do believe it is a death cult.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. It's
And
handing,
I've had to do a real about face on that, by the way, too.
of course, it's
Yeah.
handing over the keys of the kingdom to Satan and saying, um, like I said, Jupiter is the escape route out of Gnosticism. Jupiter rules the concept of form. So yes, you can look around and say we're imprisoned to matter. But what force compels this iPhone to be different than this glass? What force is coming up with the differences between plastic, glass? What is compelling molecules to become one element and not another? That is Jupiter. That is what we call form. There is in Plato the world of forms. What is he talking about? He's meaning there's a infinite invisible blueprint that all of the world is striving and building and through 3D printing itself into this blueprint. Where does the blueprint come from? Every leaf on the tree will have a little bite taken out of it. There's no such thing as a perfect leaf. It does not exist on planet Earth. There's no perfect thing. But does perfection exist? Yes, entirely. Why does every leaf know what is every leaf striving towards? They're striving towards the perfect leaf that does
Right.
exist in
Right.
the realm of forms. The Gnostics don't understand this. They're looking at it from the bottom up, not the top down, and they're trapped in molecules. And science leads people to a Gnostic. People run themselves into Gnostic solutions like carbon taxes and assisted suicide and stuff like this because they're trapped in the molecule paradigm.
Right.
For those who don't know, you can choose to view life and matter as waves, right, that are phasing in and out of material existence, or you can see it as molecules. If it's restricted to molecules, then there's no logical escape plan other than suicide or taking mass amounts of drugs to escape the body, losing yourself in any extreme escapist act is
Right.
kind of matrix delusions.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that the political theater has really fueled that.
Hmm.
It's really turned on the gas jets for this idea of Gnosticism, even though some people may not say, well, I'm a Gnostic and I'm just, tapping out of this life. There is this overwhelming sense, I believe, of cynicism. And a little bit of cynicism isn't bad, but a lot of cynicism is terrible
Yeah.
because it turns a person bitter and it keeps them from finding things that connect us all and focuses on things that tear us apart.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I mean, even somebody who's theoretically as bright as Whitney Webb, right, who I believe is sort of a black pill and unacknowledged Gnostic, that she finds things that think will bring people together, but in reality, it's only for a very small subset of people who believe the same things as she does and in the same way. And I got on a real warpath with a lot of these black pill people on Twitter. And I started to do shows about it. And I got the ire of Derek Bros. He and I have gotten into it a lot on Twitter. And even somebody like David Icke, who at one point in time I actually respected. And now I don't have contempt for him, but he's not doing anybody any services by what he's putting out. David Icke is a Gnostic. He won't come right out and tell you that, but that's exactly what he is.
He's a materialist too. Is if if you're if you're interacting with people who when he says that people are shapeshifters, right? It's the same materialist birdcage that he's stuck in when Zechariah Stitchin says, "Oh well, these people were saying that knowledge came from the stars." Well, clearly they're talking about themselves getting in spaceships going to and from the stars. They don't have any conception of knowledge and light being, transmitted through the collective unconscious. If they see a parallel between cultures in Peru and Africa, oh well, clearly someone got in a spaceship and brought this over here and dropped it off. It has to be linear. It has to be material, hand passing to another hand. You know what I mean? They don't see the David Icke doesn't see the metaphor in being a shapeshifter. A shapeshifter for him, that's a race of shapeshifters, and that's their whole identity. For me, I see a people, a race of humans who have become shapeshifters, who've indulged in shapeshifting, that they're willing to adopt the morals of their host. And so I think he's chasing, the Gnostic, getting drunk on Gnosticism is getting fueled with sci-fi terminology, and David Icke is a great example of that. And also the UFO movement, like Zechariah Stitchin and all this stuff they're materialists. They believe in the molecules. They think that it's all that ideas and concepts get handed off from one person to the next. And
Right.
I would say the knowledge is coming from the stars. These people point to the stars in their ancient artwork. That doesn't mean they came from the stars in a spaceship. It means they were tuned into those stars. They were summoning the information from that constellation down. But to a materialist, it's one thing can only transfer to another thing by getting in a car and going there, or getting in a spaceship and going there, and whatever. I hope people see that.
The other thing with Ike is that, his daughter passed away, I think about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago.
It's terrible.
And I noticed that he became much, much more bitter with her loss. And and every day he's such a weird paradox, right? Like every day he's on Twitter, shouting at the clouds. And his biggest cloud is Elon Musk, but he has no problem using Elon Musk's platform to promote his tour through Great Britain, right? Which I find always fascinating. By the way, I'm not a huge Elon Musk guy either. So yeah, what an odd play for me. Elon Musk was always the next man up for Bill Gates. Right. It's like Bill Gates was going to lose his cachet and appeal, and they needed another version of Bill Gates for a younger generation.
Oh, yeah. And what's it called? The Tyrell Corporation?
Yeah,
Martell Corporation.
Tyrell. Yeah, that's in Blade Runner.
He's the guy's name, the patriarch of the Tyrell Corporation, or the Alien franchise, whatever, the Prometheus, who's the crazy billionaire who wants to be God through AI and automated.
Right. That
guy. Yeah, he wants to be God, He's a loser, by the way. You can look at someone and determine their mental fortitude, the strength, how many calluses they have on their hand, someone's tough. Elon Musk is as soft as they come when it comes to reading the body, reading the face. I mean, to think that he's dominating business meetings or any of this is laughable. You can see him when he's discussing the space, the specs on the space rocket right before it launches. He doesn't know jack shit about shit. He's saying things and he's getting corrected by everyone around him as to what he's just hiring the right people, and he's not a genius. People need to realize this. Not a genius.
I remember listening to him when he was on a conference call with people from Twitter before he had just bought it, right? And I'm listening to him on this conference call, And I'm thinking, this guy's either an idiot or he's playing dumb for them so he can
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
shiv them when they're not looking, right? It was the most unintelligible set of questions. And what they were actually doing, this was the weird part, is he was supposed to be talking to them about the transition and Twitter. They were dominating the entire conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They were driving every single talking point in every narrative. They were interviewing him, not the other way around. And his answers were not really well thought out, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't know how he got into the position of power that he is now. I think it's most logical that he really did. He is closer with his dad than he leads on, and he really is continuing this family operation. His whole story is like, oh yeah, my dad's super rich, but I never, I went my own way. I don't like him, right? I don't think that's the case at all. I think he's a big daddy's boy. I think he's a big mommy's boy, and also his choice of women. I mean, this is not a super genius. This is not a leader or even Grant Cardone, who I think is a shitty loser grifter, blows him out of the water in terms of decision making, articulation, dominating a room. I mean, I'll believe Grant Cardone is going to the moon before Elon Musk is. It's Elon Musk is like he's like a dad. He's like a chubby loser dad who you'd be like, man, he shouldn't have had kids. He was like too immature. And
well, I'm gonna push back just a little bit.
Push back
on your last sentence.
That's all right.
I think that the child that he has now has changed his life, because this child is biological, right? He had a biological kid. By the way, Joan, my girlfriend, has kind of a 6-degree separation with a connection with that kid, and knows some of the medical history about that kid, which I'm not going to get into. But that's a biological child. If you look at all the children he had before, they're all fucking weird. They're all like test tube kids. And he's got 7 of them or something like that. One's already died. Another one is going trans. But this boy that he had with Grimes is a biological kid. And I think that's changed him somewhat. Now, has it changed him considerably? I don't know. But I would say that they say that Kamala Harris doesn't have an investment in the future. I think Musk has a bit of an investment in the future with this kid. Now, maybe it's his future. Who knows? Weird, wacky Neuralink. But there's something about having a biological child that does change your life.
Lord said a good comment in here. L. Ron Hubbard, Elon Musk. I can kind of see Elon Musk going with all the kids he's had. That's like cult leader behavior number one, impregnating every woman you can. But then also this whole space stuff, where's it going? The finances is not it's not all just about money. He's going to realize this. He's already the richest man there is. Why isn't he just
theoretical?
Kind of right. It's all government. Right. It's all government. It's all government subsidized. In truth. But his whole thing is the microchips in the brains. I'm never going to forget about that. This isn't like I say with the Rothschilds or Rockefellers or whatever. They don't need money. They pretty much print money at this point. He doesn't need money. This is something spiritual. All this momentum getting dumped into these Mars projects and all this shit, it's spiritual. I think at some point,
it's a quest to find his inner male. I mean, you've just basically said he's a lumpy, soft, Dad, what's he trying to find? He's trying to find Mars, right?
Yeah.
He's
Oh, that's a good
taken
point.
Mars and he's externalized Mars. That's what he's
Yeah.
doing.
Good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, well, what does wanting to nuke Mars say about him? He said he wanted to nuke Mars to freeze it. That could tell you something about what he wants
Oh,
for mankind too, which is I think it's all fake anyway. But Elon, I think he's going to start like some religion. I'm not even kidding. I think he's going to start. Where's all this going? More money? You know what I mean? He promised we'd be on Mars by 2025. That's not happening.
well,
Uh,
it's interesting because L. Ron Hubbard was buddies with Robert Heinlein. They were both military intelligence, and Heinlein and Hubbard had a competition to see who would start their own religion the fastest, and
mhm,
clearly Hubbard won, right? But Heinlein wrote "Stranger from a Strange Land" or "Stranger in a Strange Land," and it's about a young guy from Mars, and
mhm,
his name is Mike. And one of the things that's interesting is the role that water plays, because he's actually born on Mars in some kind of aqueous environment to offset the pressure of the planet. What do you got there? Oh, you got
No,
some.
it's for some of your chat that we're
You want
talking
to know what
about.
you're wearing? There you go.
Someone guessed it correctly. I'm impressed. No, keep talking. I was just
Anyway, he falls into the Stranger in a Strange Land, and Mike from Stranger in a Strange Land starts his own religion.
mhm,
He's born on Mars, and Elon Musk falls into the same category in some ways.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't trust him one bit. I don't like him. I don't think he has any redeeming qualities, but I can be a little opinionated. But I think he sucks. Elon Musk.
Well,
It's
so my question is the people that own Twitter are like BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard and all these huge corporations, but not even corporations, they're holding companies, right? And they all have huge management stakes in Twitter. So why would they let him buy Twitter,
mhm.
right, and turn it into a tool that could ultimately be used against them? That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and I think you know what I think about space. I think he's the number one scarecrow gatekeeper for space. It's like it's kind of like the QAnon. It's kind of like what people say about QAnon, where they say Trump. People have this like savior complex where they want a savior. They'd rather, people are afraid of three things, right? Death, public speaking, and accountability, right? And the appeal of QAnon was where you could say, oh, well, I don't have to go fix anything in the government. The right man's going to get in there and he's going to fix everything. And it's going to be like the Garden of Eden in 2 weeks after the election. The Elon Musk thing's kind of the same. People are like, oh, well, we don't have to preserve this because Elon Musk is just going to get us to all these new planets. He's like God. He's like
I,
Prometheus. He's like,
I don't know how his act is playing, man. I mean, I just don't get that people are entranced with Elon Musk and are falling for the bait. I just don't get that, right?
yeah,
I think they're happy to use Twitter and be able to talk about Jews and not get kicked off.
yeah.
And then beyond that, I'm not sure who's really like smoking at his hookah, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're gonna have a different world on Wednesday. No matter what happens, it's going to be a different world. To your
Oh, yeah.
point, it will be the same, and some things won't change, and we won't be falling off of a cliff, but it will not be the same. I do believe this is the last election we'll ever have in a presidential sense. It,
Democratic. Well,
and
one.
from this point forward, it's almost like BC and AD, whatever they call it now. We're at a moment in time. This is demarcated, especially when we move into Pluto and Aquarius, because we're not moving back to Pluto and Capricorn. That's
Yeah.
it. That time is done.
America's Pluto return too. This is probably the climax of that.
Well, what happens after that? We go to war. It's a revolutionary fucking war. Pluto and Aquarius is revolutionary. And Neptune is going to be in Aries, and that the last time Neptune was in Aries was the Civil War. So we have
go ahead.
And then Uranus is in Taurus. The last time Uranus was in Taurus was during World War II. Right.
Yeah.
So we have these outer planets that have all been there during these great conflicts, right? And we're living with all of them.
Could also be a new lease on life,
Oh,
if you make it past a Pluto return, you earned another Pluto return. You earned another 248 years.
Yeah. Right? Well, it's going to get very interesting, especially when Uranus goes into Gemini and goes into that tight sextile with Pluto. Look out, man. Mm-hmm. This thing is like, you better be prepared. You better be prepared to surf the chaos and be able to do it gracefully, because things are going to happen so quickly. And some of it will be interesting. There'll be some interesting things that'll happen. I guarantee you, right? There's going to be like individual breakthroughs of genius during this time that we're going to witness. That won't all be corporate. It won't all be top down, like regulated technology. There are going to be people that are going to be popping up with really interesting solutions to things.
Yeah.
And I've always said that, the world doesn't need another Jefferson, or the world doesn't need another Tesla. The world needs a million Edisons and a million Teslas, right? Because then the suppression technology just can't be held back anymore. So anyway, it's going to be interesting times. Got anything else you wanna say or share before we turn out the lights here?
No. If you're in Florida, vote against Amendment 3. That's the weed one. It's a Trojan horse. It's a false flag. It's a no good amendment. Number one, weed shouldn't be in the amendment either way, good or bad. That's not what constitutions are for. But if you're in Florida, vote against Amendment 3. That's all I'd say.
And you're in Florida, come stop by your bookstore, right?
Yeah, Dancing Elephant, Palm Beach, Lake Worth Beach, Florida.
And what do you got cooking on the content side of things?
Got that video about a tree, the baobab tree, which is like a follow-up to one I did a year ago. And then I'm doing a video on, this is very interesting. You know about the Denver airport, right? The Denver airport's, it's like the Illuminati hotel, right? Or sorry, it's the Illuminati airport. Well, I'm doing a video on what's called the Faina Hotel. Faina. This is the work of Alan Faina, an Jewish Argentine designer, businessman. The Faina Hotel is a hotel in Miami Beach it's the Denver airport of hotels. So all the murals, all the artwork, all the names of the different wings of the hotel, everything. It's an alchemical, Freemasonic, Rosicrucian gold mine. It's overt. It's open. It's not hidden. It's like the Denver airport. It's a 5-star A-list hotel. DiCaprio lives there, or has a place there. Kanye has a place there. You can live there too. You can own a suite there, but it's called the Faina. And the Faina is the last stage of a bullfight. But I'm talking about them because they just announced they're opening another hotel in Miami. It's a big condo. It's like residential. But nobody talks about them on YouTube too. There's not a single video about all the occult symbolism at this hotel. And Shit's crazy. There's Damien Hirst, right? The artist. He's
Mhm.
friends with Marina Abramovich.
Mhm.
He's one of Marina Abramovich's favorite artists. And he's not an artist. He's a fucking fool. He's a clown. But he does these animal pieces. Like he's kind of like taxidermy artwork type weird sculptures, or not sculptures, but pieces of art. In the back of this Faina hotel is one of the most expensive pieces of art, modern pieces of art, that doesn't have some historic value, just made from scratch and then boom, a dollar amount to it. In terms of that being a new piece of art, it's one of the most, if not the most expensive piece of art created in modern times. It's called Gone But Not Forgotten, something like that. It's a $25 million gold mammoth skeleton. So it's a real skeleton of a mammoth dipped in gold, plated or leafed, whatever, in gold. The case that it's in is also solid gold. It's in the back of this hotel. You got a nice little bestiality scene right there. That's nice of him.
Isn't that like the rape of Europa or something like that?
I don't know. It looks like a minotaur
Minotaur. Yeah.
getting down and dirty. But this guy's disgusting. He put this big piece of art in the back. They sold it. It's valued at 25 million, but they got $10 million for it when they auctioned it for charity. Guess what charity? AIDS.
AIDS charity.
Yep.
Oh.
But
No, that's real art. That's real art right there. Look at that.
Dude, he's like the father. It's like him and Andy Warhol are like the father of dog shit art getting ridiculously valuable. Money laundering.
Well, at least Warhol had some kind of commentary on art as a consumer product. Like he was there first, right? He put his flag in the ground first, and everything else after Warhol is kind of an imitation. And he also is influenced heavily by Jeff Koons, who is another one of these so-called artists. Jeff Koons doesn't really do anything artistic. He just gets people to do things for him. So interesting. So is Damien Hirst's art inside this hotel? Was that what you're okay?
Yeah, it's in the backyard. This piece called Gone But Not Forgotten. It's a golden mammoth. By the way, mammoths lived in Florida. It's not just a ice age thing. They lived in Florida not long ago. Mammoths and mastodons. And yeah, that's it, really. The bull, all the artwork. They have Freemasonic murals on the in the lobby. The place is crazy. But
all right. Well, we'll look out for that, and we'll look out for your piece on the baobab tree, which I think is really fascinating. And it's always great having you on here.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Robert. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. And we'll be in touch after election night, and we'll compare some notes. Are you doing a show at all on election night?
We might. Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So I'm going to have a marathon. I'm going to start about 4:00 Central Standard Time. So people that are watching, take note of this. And I'll be streaming probably until 11, 12 Central Standard Time, maybe later. And I'm going to have guests. I'll have, quite frankly, we'll be on for a brief period. And my buddy Mark Malone will be with us. And then right around 10 o'clock, David Palmer, the Leo King, is going to jump on. And we'll be taking this thing deep into the night. So if you get bored, you want to, hang out with us, come on over. We'll get you on for, however long you want to be on there, and we can just talk shit about what's happening and And if not, then I'll see you on the other side.
Sure, yeah, I'm down.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Dr. Longo, give it up for him. Go check out his Old World Florida YouTube channel. Go to his bookstore and get a piece of the action. In the meantime, I'm going to sign off as well. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday night over on Rumble. And I'll have links on Twitter. I'll have links on Locals. And just keep an eye out for that. And we're going to bear witness to history. And if you haven't voted, go out and vote. If you've already voted, go out and vote again.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see you on Tuesday night. In the meantime, take good care. God bless. And bye for now.
Peace. Good night.